All right, so I'm gonna call this regular meeting of the Deep River Planning and Zoning Commission to order Thursday, January 16th, 2025. It is now 7 p.m. Do a roll call. Tony Bolduc, Chairman, Lisa Di Maria.
Here.
Alan Parody.
Here.
Tim Puglielli.
Here.
Thank you. Stan Reinheimer, which I didn't see online either. Mary Stay.
Here.
Daniel Smith.
Here.
Jonathan Kastner.
Here.
And I'm going to seat you for Stan.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, on to audience of citizens. Citizens may address the commission on items that are not on the agenda. So there's a couple of you guys here, so anything,
I have a question.
fire away.
I noticed that,
Hey, say your name.
hi, Catherine Russell, Deep River resident and one of the selectmen. I noticed that you've asked the public to review soon as it's posted, the MS4 wastewater report. And I'm wondering, is there anything you particularly want us to look at? Or how you want us to review it? I read it a couple of years ago, it was heavy lifting. But is there anything from a P&C viewpoint that you want us to pay attention to?
I actually haven't looked at it yet. No, I
I don't
just,
think it's posted yet. It says it's coming.
yeah,
soon.
just saw that and I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. So I'll be honest with you, I don't know what you should be looking for yet.
Okay,
So, but I,
stay tuned.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, that just came into the selectmen's office this morning for posting, but it hasn't been released yet by the engineer.
All right, anyone else? Audience of citizens?
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Jeremy Chase. I'm a Deep River resident and a member of the EDC and so hello.
Right. Good to see you. All right, anybody else? All right, if not, on to approval of minutes. However, I'm gonna need a motion to amend the agenda so we can include the November meeting minutes.
Right, but, has everybody had a chance to review? There's no reason to change the agenda unless everybody's seen them. I know they came up today.
So did anybody review them? That's fair.
I did read that. Yeah, so I would move to, amend the agenda to, include the November meeting minutes.
Second,
Second.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so, on to item A, meeting minutes, December 12th, 2024. Everybody have a chance to read them? Any changes? If not, motion to approve.
I'd make a motion to approve as submitted.
Thank you, second? I'll second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody abstaining? No. Great, on to, item B, which was the November meeting minutes. So same thing, if you got a chance to read them. For a motion to approve those.
Motion to approve as submitted.
You, a second?
Second.
You, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody standing or opposed? All right. If not, on to item 4, new business. We have a presentation from Desegregate Connecticut. So I think, someone was online for that, but they didn't.
Yes, I'm here for the presentation. I just requested to get access to share my screen.
You should be able to.
Okay,
Right
yeah,
there.
I see it. All right.
Can you see?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, it's just loading up now. Then let me know if folks can see that. Can you see that big purple?
Yep.
Okay, I have no idea how big my head is. If it's a big screen in there, I apologize. But well, thank you so much for the opportunity to come to speak tonight. My name is Pete Harrison. I'm the Connecticut director of the Regional Plan Association, which is a planning nonprofit in the tri-state area that oversees Desegregate Connecticut. And some of you, I've been down in Deep River once or twice when I was the director of Desegregate. Specifically, we have a new director just starting this week. Couldn't make it tonight, but we're very excited to be having him in the mix soon. So tonight, I just wanted to give the commission and any folks in Deep River an update on the Work, Live, Ride proposal at the state level that we have been working on over the last couple of years. The legislative session just started last week. We are very confident that Work, Live, Ride will pass into law this year. So just wanted to give you all a brief on what it is and what if Deep River is interested in participating in it. It is an opt-in bill, what that could look like potentially. And just give you an opportunity to ask some questions and get feedback and just for context, we introduced the bill a couple of years ago and have been doing a lot of these briefs over the last couple of years. I think we're over 60 planning and zoning commissions now. And it's been really, really helpful for us getting feedback from folks on the ground doing the work, and obviously trying to explain what we're working on as well. So just want to reiterate how much we appreciate the opportunity. And it is a two-way dialogue that we really have taken to heart, which I think is partly why we're on the cusp of getting passed here. So just a quick background about Desegregate Connecticut. We are a pro-homes coalition of just about 80 neighborhood and nonprofit groups. We believe that better land use laws will make Connecticut more prosperous, more equitable, and more sustainable. And we have what we sort of describe how we want to address the housing shortage and the climate crisis by saying it's an all of the above approach. So we are nonpartisan. We want to build all kinds of homes to own and to rent, privately owned, publicly owned, public-private partnership, you name it. We want to act at every level of government. That's to assist folks on the ground locally like you to think even more regionally and to work at the state level. And then, as importantly, connecting all these related issues. All of you know, the Planning and Zoning Commission land use work in general touches on the tax base, touches on business development, on education policy, on transportation policy. So we try to bring that entire lens into this work as well. And we are really excited about Work, Live, Ride. That's been our state legislative proposal over the last couple of years. And the basic 30,000 foot view of it is it's a state level proposal that incentivizes local communities and importantly organizes state agencies to create more transit oriented communities. And I'll explain that term in a second here. But really on a kind of philosophical level, we know we need more homes in Connecticut, but we don't want to repeat that pattern of urban sprawl that takes away particularly more rural communities, character like Deep River. So we are trying to think of this as if we've been using sprawl as a planning framework in Connecticut for most of the 20th century, we're trying to introduce a post-sprawl concept for planning. And that's really to focus responsible growth around the parts of our communities where maybe there is some density already, or there's public transportation, or there's existing infrastructure, or there could be existing or new infrastructure. So that's really what's motivating Work, Live, Ride at a foundational level. We don't want to turn every part of the state into what a suburb or a big city. We want to concentrate that growth in smart places by still also having the opportunity for smaller rural places like Deep River to think creatively about how you can add a little bit more mixed use housing in the right places. So talking about this transit-oriented communities concept, most people will think of transit-oriented development, TODs. It's a very popular planning concept. The reason we use transit-oriented communities, and it is a term that is being adopted in other states and other parts of Connecticut, it is to get to that bigger philosophical view, because admittedly the way the state of Connecticut thinks about TOD, it kind of just thinks of one-off projects, maybe building a commuter parking lot near a train station or allowing one mixed-use development, and that's TOD. Transit-oriented communities is a larger framework, a lot more nuance and diversity of big city and small town within that. But generally, if we want to grow Connecticut responsibly on an economic side and responsibly on an environmental side, we think this concept is a really smart way to do that, given this relatively small geography and 200 years of industrial legacy infrastructure in Connecticut. We think there's a significant opportunity for Connecticut to grow. We think that will happen because of climate change and other demographic factors. But if we are not smart about how we do that, we are going to continue to repeat the mistakes that we've made, in places like Deep River will suffer for that, which none of us want to see. And I just want to reiterate too that transit-oriented communities is not at all a new concept. Most of our most beloved parts of Connecticut, again, small towns or big cities, are historically transit-oriented communities. They're located on a river, on a rail line, on a canal, something along that has made it more walkable, more dense naturally. Now, the train's not coming back to Deep River. I did take the Polar Express from the Essex steam train with my son earlier this year, which is the last time I was in Deep River, or last year, last time I was in Deep River. So we're not, reinventing the wheel or saying we're going to go back to the 1800s where there's trains everywhere. But we do want to stress that this is not a foreign concept. This is really getting back to that New England character and complementing that New England character. So I'm going to jump over a little bit of this, but the big themes of Work, Live, Ride, the reason why we call it Work, Live, Ride is number one, work. This is a way to create accessible jobs, more foot traffic for local businesses, easier transit options for workers between jobs and homes and vice versa. The live part of it is we do want to encourage more affordable homes. That's both the capital A deed restricted level, but also the more naturally affordable house, that the starter home type, the downscale type that we've not really been able to build in Connecticut. Just a more variety to own and to rent, and to be more strategic about where we do put state resources for affordable housing. And then the final part is the ride part. We're stressing the public transportation side of it, and I'll get into what that means for Deep River specifically. But I think the key point for the ride aspect is we want safer streets. There needs to be a critical mass around transit for people to make that switch, to take some cars off the road and trucks off the road. We also have pretty stark increase of pedestrian deaths in Connecticut. I think the number might have been 65 in 2024. And there are all kinds of reasons for that, but that's probably not a trend that's going down without some bigger rethinking of our road network. And, importantly, there's that vehicular miles traveled, which is a big metric that the state and the federal government use. It's how many miles your individual car travels on a given day. And we're not saying magically in Deep River, Connecticut, you're going to be able to live in Deep River and not have a car. That's not at all what we're saying. But what we are saying is if there's a little bit more walkability, a little bit more housing in the downtown center, that means your household vehicular miles traveled is going to go down. If you have to get into the car right now to drop your kids off at school or go to the CVS for, paper towels, those are all vehicular miles traveled. And if we can reduce even a little bit of that, 20% of that per household, which is a pretty modest amount, we're going to see an increase in or decrease in congestion, a decrease in pollution and carbon emissions because of cars. And we're just generally going to get into this post-sprawl world that we've talked about. So, on the one hand, we think of this as a really big transformative concept, but the bill itself is really pretty incremental. And I'll get into that right now. This is just a little bit of a stat about public transportation. Generally, most people in Connecticut are familiar, of course, with Metro North, Hartford Line, Shoreline East, which is a significant ridership even post-COVID. But the bus ridership in Connecticut is actually on a ride basis actually higher. That never really dipped that much, and that's already back past pre-COVID levels. So 111 communities, including Deep River, have some form of public transportation. It's not heavy rail getting you to Grand Central. The River Valley District is a little bit more of a limited service, and we'll talk more about that. But it exists, it's there, and something to build around and to encourage, which is really exciting. And this is just a map of kind of different levels of it. I'm going to send this presentation to the folks, so for all of you, so you won't have to try to squint and see that. So now I just want to spend a few minutes just talking specifically about how this proposal, Work, Live, Ride, will work. And this is based on the last couple of years of its evolution. But you can see this Venn diagram here, and really at the core of it is this Office of Responsible Growth, which already exists. It's existed since Governor Norrell created it in 2006. It basically is supposed to help liaison with local communities. When you submit your POCDs and your affordable housing plans at the municipal level, those go to the Office of Responsible Growth. It also oversees the state equivalent of the POCD that comes out every 5 years, which on paper is supposed to mean it dictates what state agency actions happen and where it puts funding around responsible growth goals. Kind of historically, that has not really taken place. It wasn't a particularly strong office on a statutory basis or on a funding basis. But we really think because it already exists, because it's already working with local communities and working with state agencies, this is the best possible quarterback for the transit-oriented community concept. So on the left here, this is very important for you on the Planning and Zoning Commission. What you basically would need to do in Work Live Ride is, if you want to opt into this program, the Planning and Zoning Commission, along with the Inland Wetlands Commission and the community, would come together to figure out where and what size they want this district to be. I have a slide coming up of just kind of ideas to shoot around for Deep River specifically. But you ultimately have the decision of where you want to do this, how big the size of the district will be. Once you pass that district in your normal public feedback, final highest council vote, once that's passed, the Office of Responsible Growth, which has been assisting you along the way to designing this district, then really works as your advocate to get prioritization of key state infrastructure funding. So what happens right now in Deep River and other particularly smaller communities, it's, maybe I know you've got the consulting planning firm with you, maybe you have a part-time economic development coordinator, but it can be really hard applying for state grants. It's a bifurcated process. The timelines don't always sync up. Sometimes they contradict each other. Sometimes you'll get partial grants one year and you're stuck waiting on a developer that needs the other part of that state grant. So you all know better than anyone else how frustrating it can be to deal with the state right now. And the Office of Responsible Growth under Work Live Ride is going to streamline all of that and quarterback all of that. And on the state agency side, get those agencies to sync up their applications, sync up their priorities, and put that money and that technical assistance into the towns and cities first that are prioritizing, that are opting into Work Live Ride. We think it's reasonable for taxpayer dollars to be going to communities that do want to grow the state's economic output and also think about the conservation aspects of the state. So that's all pretty much how it works. So there's this Office of Responsible Growth sitting in the middle of this really kind of complicated dynamic right now with the intention of really streamlining that. I will also add the Municipal Redevelopment Authority, which just officially launched at the end of last year. Some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not be, but that's a really exciting additional state arm that we're going to be working closely with this Office of Responsible Growth that has some direct capital to invest in projects. And if folks are familiar with that, both of these things are going to work very closely together. So to be very clear, what a municipality gets by opting into Work Live Ride, number one is actual control. There's a lot of misinformation and confusion about anything coming out of the state in terms of zoning reform, but Work Live Ride is demonstrably an opt-in process. You at the P&Z level locally control it. It's a locally driven, normal public process. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you are not comfortable with how that process is going, the town can opt out of it and no harm and no foul. On the second side of it, you get the technical assistance, both from the Office of Responsible Growth, certainly from other agencies, to help you, in particular, designing the district itself. What do we need in terms of soil studies? Is there septic capacity? Is there water and sewer capacity? What kind of state funding would we need to actually get this area ready to develop in a pre-development process? All of those kinds of technical things that are frankly very difficult for small towns and even cities to manage will be provided with the Office of Responsible Growth and likely some consultants helping on that as well. And then the third thing and the most important thing is what I've talked about is this priority funding. You will get the first crack at a lot of discretionary agency funding, STEEP and Urban Acts. And actually, I think I've got it here. Basically 3 buckets of grants, a lot of the revitalization grants, some infrastructure and housing grants specifically to help assist in some affordable housing creation or expansion of water and sewer. And there are some specific TOD grants, both through the Office of Responsible Growth and the Department of Transportation. So it's not every grant, it's not touches anything in terms of education grants or a lot of other grants or brownfield remediation grants, but generally speaking, anything related to infrastructure improvements, that's something that your community would have priority for. Now, importantly, if a town doesn't opt into this, you're ineligible to get those grants. You can still apply for them, but this is just a leg up in getting those grants. And we think that's a pretty attractive thing because in total, these are tens of millions of dollars per cycle for communities to, potentially dip into. So one of the key parts of actually doing this TOC district overlay, there are some guidelines related to it. Now, at a preference, if a town has already done a TOD district, which is there are about 12 in the state that have done that, they're grandfathered in, so they don't have to comply to this. If a new community wants to opt into this, these are the kinds of guidelines that they do have to do. So it's not exactly a mandate. There's still a lot of discretion and nuance, but you got to kind of get these things into the district to be compliant. So number one, again, as I've said, it's the Planning and Zoning Commission. You are driving the process. The Inland Wetlands Commission is also consulted in terms of what falls under their jurisdiction. We don't want stuff in wetlands or key water basins or protection watershed spaces. Deep River, obviously, you have a lot of that. So, in a priority sense, you're going to be proactive about where this thing even makes sense. You will figure out where in town you would want to do this, and Office of Responsible Growth will give advice and help on some of the work, but they're not telling you where to put this. The next part is it must be a reasonable size. That is a loose term. 3 years ago or 2 years ago when we started it, we had a half-mile radius and a certain amount of acres, but just geographically speaking, it doesn't always make sense for communities. So again, there's a lot of discretion. I don't think if you did a 2-acre overlay that would be compliant, but it doesn't have to be 500 acres. There's some sweet spot of districts, even non-continuous parcels that you probably want to be included in this. You would have discretion to do so. And then a couple in terms of the specific planning and zoning aspects, it can't have excessive requirements for a couple of things: parking, lot size, floor area ratio, setbacks, and height restrictions. To be clear, you can still have all of those. Sorry, my dog is barking. This is being squirreled away in my guest room. Apologies. You can still have parking requirements. You can still have height requirements, design requirements, but they just can't be unreasonable in the sense that if they're too restrictive, they're just not going to make those parcels developable, which if you're doing this process, you want them to be. So generally speaking, those are designed to create the kind of village density that we want to see. It's not overbuilding, but it's also not allowing some of the classic mistakes that we've been making that limit the amount of developable land that we rezone. So that's pretty much it in terms of the guidelines. There are a couple of aspects on the affordable housing side that would switch anything with the special permit to being as of right. Again, as of right is just you allow under the guise of what other restrictions and regulations you have. As long as you meet those other regulations, you get a permit without having to go to a special permit. So it's not a free-for-all, just limiting what the oversight is at the district level. So any kind of smaller type of development under 9 homes, so your duplexes, triple deckers, townhomes, cluster homes, anything below 9 homes per development would be allowed as of right. Any developments with 30% deed restricted units over 10. So basically anything that could be compliant with 830G, a town has a little bit of incentive of doing work with RAD because you can proactively say, we want those types of bigger developments here. We don't want them there. All of a sudden, if you're doing it as of right, that developer that might have the money to sue you and try to stretch through things is just going to have that incentive to go and where you want it, which we think we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about across the spectrum on that. And then anything that is 100% deed restricted affordable, whether it's a public housing authority, municipally owned, a religiously owned site, nonprofit, whatever that is, if that's 3 units that are deeply affordable housing or 20 units, as long as it's 100% affordable, that would be allowed as of right in this district as well. And then very importantly, any other type of development in the district would still go through your normal special permit, public hearing, back and forth process. So it's not a total free-for-all in the district. It's just trying to incentivize particularly smaller developments or affordable housing developments. And we think hopefully that balance changes some of the economics we're all struggling with on getting some of this stuff built. but everything else you would still have a permit on. And I'm just going to wrap up just kind of an overview where we are. As I said, we introduced this a couple years ago. We passed in the House last year with 90 votes. It was a bipartisan vote. We ran out of time in the Senate, like a lot of other bills in the short session. So that means we're coming back with pretty much the same bill that got those 90 votes. We're very confident that given it probably should have passed, Governor Lamont would have signed it and said so publicly, which is sort of a clock management issue. We are coming back hopefully early in the session and are pretty confident that it's going to pass. So that's pretty much where the overview is. I put together this very brief brainstorming idea. I'm not an expert on Deep River, you are, but just wanted to make it clear what your options are if this passes and you're thinking about it. Number one option is you don't have to do anything. Absolutely is an opt-in. So if you just don't want to do it now, don't think you're ready, not interested, fair enough, totally fine. One of the things that came up first, as I traveled through Deep River, certainly something along Route 154 and kind of Elm Street. We actually did an event there a couple years ago. We just a cute little downtown, but that's along the Valley River Transit. There are 2 bus routes. Again, it's not heavy transit, but it exists. It's there. That could be a really easy place to think about where would you want some infill development, some help on dollars, expanding water and sewer, whatever you might be thinking about already. And then the third one is just a little bit more creative. The way Work Live Ride is designed is, in theory, if there's a part of town, and again, I do not know Deep River enough, I don't know if this even would be a case, but if there is a 50-acre site, maybe on Route 80 or closer to Route 9 or something, that you're all like, oh, it'd be awesome if we could do something there, but we don't have the water and sewer, or we don't, it's kind of on its own. You could do Work Live Ride in that district. It doesn't have to be on transit if that's potentially in a smaller community like Deep River. It's kind of a transit adjacent community opportunity. So those are 3 big buckets of choice that you would have when this passes, fingers crossed, to think about it. So that's, very broad strokes, things to think about, but I've done enough of these briefs now where I've had these conversations, and demonstrably every single town commission has some part of town where they'd love to see the development. And just saying, if that's not along 154 and River Transit right now, you could entertain that. And, potentially Valley River District could even reroute that down the road at some point. So there is an opportunity to be creative, and that pet project everyone's thinking about, you might have an opportunity. So just session started last week. We don't have a bill number yet. We will certainly let folks know when that's coming. We are expecting that pretty soon, and probably a public hearing, about a month from now in the middle of February. The best way to keep updated, if you're not already on the Desegregate CT newsletter, we send out a weekly newsletter on Wednesdays with updates and news about local Connecticut planning and development issues and other stuff. So that's on our website, and I can include a link in the chat, but I'll send this presentation over to everybody afterwards. And that's it. So I just wanted to say thanks again for the opportunity to give the brief, and I'm happy to stick around for some questions.
So actually, I had one that I just thought of. So you talked about you have to limit parking requirements, but if let's say you have some sites that are they have enough parking, and the state allows for fee in lieu of parking, can you still include that in the new development, in the transit-oriented development?
So you're saying you have a site that has parking, or you have a regulation in place that instead of parking, there's a fee in lieu?
Well, no, let's say you have on-street parking, and this is just a hypothetical. So you have on-street parking, and the site, they want to develop the site, and you can prove that there's enough parking within a 500-foot radius. And the state allows you in those situations to do fee in lieu of parking because you don't have it on site. Can you still do that?
Yeah, surprisingly, I'm not familiar with the fee in lieu for parking at the state level. That's interesting. I will look into that. My sense of it is, having worked with this Office of Responsible Growth on drafting the language, because things like that exist and there's different nuances in local regulations, it kind of comes down to what you and the commission would want to do. So yeah, if there is a scenario where this particular site is in the district and maybe you want to have, 1.25 parking spaces per bedrooms as a general rule, you could carve out this particular area and say, we think there's a lot of, enough parking or otherwise. I will be honest, the best practices and something we've tried to advocate for in general is not having any parking minimums. Of course, it doesn't mean parking is not going to get built, but it just means you kind of leave that up to the developer and the lot itself, because too much parking does take up a lot of the lot size, particularly for those smaller developments. We've gotten into a lot of political battles trying to explain that and fight on that. So what we have in our TOC district language for this is just no excessive parking requirements. And that's
Right.
widely what could work in this scenario, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, that's why it was said overzealous, and I didn't know if fee and would be that.
Yeah.
The second question is, you said there was 111 towns that have already signed up for this. So, I mean, that's pretty much the entire state at this point. So,
No, just to clarify that, it's 111 towns have some form of public transportation. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
just the wind of who potentially could have a first crack at this.
okay. And then, so in order, like, if we have in our P O C D and we intend to do it, is that enough to get us in the door? Or do we have to have, the transit oriented development district in place so it has to be in place?
Yeah, there has to be that, you can start working with the Office of Responsible Growth on that. Of course, it would want to help you on it. But once you actually do pass that overlay, again, however the
Okay.
normal process in your community works, then that triggers it. But obviously those things can be lined up. So when it's actually passed, things are already in motion
Okay.
in terms of like funding.
Pete, I have a question. You talked about 12 communities already have TOC. Are any of those 12 small towns that maybe we can, look at what they did?
Yeah, good question. Off the top of
Good.
my head, I think Bethel might be, and they're a little bit different because they're on the Danbury branch for Metro North. There is a train station there, but that might be a similar profile, maybe a little bit bigger overall population. But it's, a couple of the big cities, some Fairfield County towns, some Hartford, Greater Hartford towns.
Doesn't Clinton have one?
I
Does
think
Clinton-
Clinton does have one.
TOD.
Yeah, I think they have something. I don't know if anyone from Tai Chi's there, but they might be one. Old Saybrook, we did a walk audit there. We did one at Clinton too. So they definitely have one because there's a mill or an old factory across the street from the Shoreline East station. It's relatively new. And Old Saybrook they did a similar central business rezoning. And then that one's kind of a tricky one if you could interpret that as that counts or not. But I think near you, Old Saybrook and Clinton, definitely.
They have train stations. What kind of a bus line would qualify you since it's limited to a train station and a bus station? We have bus drops. That's the extent of what we have in town.
Yeah, so two points on that. One is we have a pretty liberal definition intentionally to keep it kind of broad for folks. So you having the River Valley Transit drop-offs would count. Now, it's not a CT fast track level bus service, but that also is something that could be built towards that and have more service. But because you do have the two routes on the river transit, that would constitute under our definition bus service. The other point I'll make is we did have, oh, sorry, you got to follow up.
Is that because it accommodates, we have to be able to define it as being able to accommodate diversity and equity? Is that the really the metric to determine whether your transit component?
The metric is if there's a fixed bus route, again, whether
Fixed
it's a covered station or a sign on the side of the road, that's the metric. And then the other point I was going to make is we did have a component 2 years ago that would allow transit adjacent communities to also participate. And the idea wouldn't be if you have a town village or a town center with no transit at all, but you want to participate in this, we actually have talked to a lot of those communities that would potentially want to. So even in a scenario where Deep River didn't have the two routes for the River Valley Transit, this opportunity would still be available for some of those towns. It's the transit adjacent, there are 111 transit towns, and then there are 54 transit adjacent towns. There really are only 6 towns in the quiet corner and the northwest corner that don't go anywhere near transit. So you were already eligible because you have fixed bus routes in town, but even if you didn't, there would still be an opportunity to participate.
Hey, Pete, you gave examples of, on the sheet, houses, duplexes, triplexes, I think. What about, old factories converted to housing? Does that fit that or no?
Yeah, absolutely. And the basic overlay we want is allowing mixed use, mixed income type development. So if you want in your district, I just spoke to Putnam last night actually, and they've got a great example of this. So in theory, if Putnam had one or you have one, you could include that in a district. And where it would fall in terms of being as of right or still needing a special permit would just come down to, how many apartments are going to be there, what percentage of those would be deed restricted or not. If the factory, just as a hypothetical, would be, 100 condos or something, and the developer in the town, you figured out a way to get 30% of those to be deed restricted towards the 10% requirement, then that would be allowed as of right. So your zoning would automatically allow that. The developer could come in and, again, based on other factors of your regulations, based on any other environmental review, they would still be able to get that permit. If they came back to you and said, we would like to do 80 apartments and we'll give you 10% of those as deed restricted, you would still have that special permit public hearing process for them. So there's a little bit of incentive, we think, for developers to try to get the higher level of affordability, which helps towns get to their numbers. But if that falls short, there's still opportunities for you to have a lot more oversight for it.
Anybody else? So it's not typical that we have an audience, so I'm just gonna, if anybody from the audience had any quick questions, I'd allow it, even though it's not a public hearing. All right. Well, I appreciate it. And then if you could, like you said, you were gonna send the slides along to Zoe so we can relook at this.
Yeah,
But,
happy to send it to Zoe. I'll send it over. If I can't get it tonight, I got to put my son down, but I'll send it over to Zoe in the morning.
Okay. Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to share. All right, on to item B, ordinance recommendations for planning and sidewalks. So those were, we hadn't discussed those in the last time. So we spent those out. I'm gonna find those up here, rental. So I'll give you a quick rundown on the planning end of this. 3 years ago, we changed our fee schedule, and we never actually updated the ordinance for that. So that's part of the red line slashed out version of this. So we'd have to get that done. And the part that we did talk about was on exempting the town from zoning. And so those changes are in this red line. I've asked our attorney to take a look at this just so it meets general statutes. So if you guys saw anything else you wanted to talk about in this.
We don't have to do things.
We voted on the fees 3 years ago. They're now kept in the planning and zoning office and the town clerk's office. So, but we had to update the actual ordinance to say that. So that was the missing piece of that. Any questions or comments about that? If not, sidewalks. And so with all our sidewalk stuff that's been going on, we're trying to get grants and all that stuff to maintain sidewalks. And we talked about blight. The one thing that wasn't really in the town maintenance code that we talked about was a sidewalk ordinance. And so Zoe, John, and I came up with the closest one we could think of, and that's what's in front of you. Somewhere. Have to do both of these.
The only comment I had on this one is there's a large amount of content discussing liability.
Mhm.
Does that really matter in the ordinance if we say not it?
I was gonna, I mean, again, these are taking leeway from somebody else's town, so.
Or can we declare that we are not it if we say? I'm not sure. I actually served on jury duty one time for cases in New York for somebody tripping on the sidewalk. I'm not sure that would hold up.
I was gonna say, and that's probably how that made that in here is, you know, that they wrote this and said, oh my God, let's make sure we have the liability for it in there, so.
Everything else made sense on this one.
All right, so where do you, I mean, that's you, you want to cross that out? Where do you want to start or just take a whole section out or?
Why don't we want a disclaimer?
Well, we could have it, but it doesn't really, it's not worth the ink that it's on. I mean, we can't just declare we're not responsible unless it's in front of City Hall. If you fall in front of Walgreens, Walgreens is responsible. And the way it would most likely go down, we can check with our council, is yeah, we would be responsible, but then we would sue Walgreens for not maintaining the other portion, which I believe is what they're actually trying to say. Right, right?
But I think that's why, you know, references the general statutes there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we're, so we still have to send this to the selectmen. They're gonna send it to the town attorney and they're gonna review
Okay.
it. So we'll make sure we mention that, a second sentence that, you know, make sure you look at that part of it.
If council says keep it in,
Okay.
then why not?
Okay. Anybody have any other comments about that?
I have one comment.
Please.
Yeah, under the first section, 1-3.
Yeah.
It talks about removing the snow and the ice from the sidewalk.
Mhm.
Okay, that's clear. And then we get to 1-4, where it says snow and ice removal. And then it talks about not plowing any snow across a road and I don't understand that part of it. We don't want it on sidewalks, I get that.
Well, that's
We
a state
don't-
statute, isn't it? You're not allowed to
To
push.
plow
things
across the road.
You're not
I
supposed
don't
to-
like you plowing snow out of my driveway across the road and leaving a big pile there.
Well, not in the road, I understand that,
But
but many
that's what
people
happens.
plow across the road. So for my example, I have a neighbor who's okay with that, yeah, push it, get it out of there and get it off
But
onto
to
the
the
other
edge part,
side.
to the other
Right.
side.
Oh, I understand not leaving it in the road.
I read this meeting like onto the road, so yeah.
Yeah, just, it should be clear, no, any private property upon it. It's clear you don't leave it in the road, I understand. that.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, a couple of these are, the ones we're going to are articulated very bad.
That's the only one. I was
Yeah, no, I agree.
thinking
It sounds
about.
like you can't go across. the-
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah,
like we
right.
can, there's
Like,
gonna be situations where you can.
who's gonna enforce that all?
Well, I don't know, that's the other question is who's gonna,
So, I mean, we can strike that, because like you said, it's covered in 1-3, but how do you guys feel about that?
it already says you can't leave it in the road and.
Well, do you want to move it up as a definition and take that part? Well, no, not really definition.
No. You could just add it to the other one.
Well, hey, I read it the way that I thought it was, but now she's saying, I mean, we can change that word to then cross to the side because it ends with.
Don't leave snow in the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the last part. It's not-
Yeah, the last part, you just need the last part.
We see the last part.
It doesn't matter if you're going across the road, you just don't leave it in the
Yeah.
road.
Person, firm, or corporation may not place any.
So just keep it brief, don't leave snow on the road and pick up after your dog.
It says you
Please.
can't cross the
Yes.
street
Yeah.
or leave it in the road. That's what that.
Because sometimes the big plows will go across the road and then they leave these like little rut, like little things and then they freeze and then somebody might, hit them.
That's kind of what I was thinking. If
If you want to please those guys, I'm all for it. Getting 3 of my mailboxes.
You paid big bucks for it.
Well, that's why.
They're
that's
big,
the
but they're
intent.
based on mailbox.
You don't go across the road with the snow.
I have a question about downtown parking on private property.
Okay, it's not,
Well, the conventional wisdom is can't be done, can't be done, can't be done because of liability.
Yep.
Is there any way that the town can indemnify the bank in terms of their liability in return for being allowed to park there? Everybody parks there. We all park there when we need to. We know when the bank hours are and we don't block their roads.
I mean, yeah, you get an attorney and write an agreement between the town and the bank, but that's not a planning and zoning thing.
Property.
Yeah.
So.
It's never gonna happen.
I don't think Courtney would ever go for that.
I mean, it's just, I don't know, I just thought something,
Because then you have to assume the bank is keeping, maintaining their parking lot, there's not spikes in there, something odd, you know.
oh, so liability
Town.
both ways, you mean?
Yeah, but I don't think the town wants to take on more liability.
No?
Procurement.
All right, so I'm gonna jump back to the snow and ice thing.
Yeah.
Or we just scratch, what are we doing? To scratch it or?
Well, we can leave take out the first portion that she pointed out. She's absolutely correct. That's kind of ridiculous. And then leave the second portion
Yeah.
that is redundant to what I believe is the state. But yeah, just say, it can't be snow or ice on any private property upon town.
And then, so take out after highway and
Yeah,
just-
yeah.
and that, okay.
Pretty much keep the last sentence, maybe we can a little bit.
Okay. You don't need. You guys are good with that? We will make a motion to pass this on to the board of selectmen.
I'll make a motion to pass this on to the board of selectmen.
Okay. Need a second?
Second.
Thank you. So you want a roll call? We're all gonna do it all in favor. Roll call. We're all in favor. All right. How about all in favor? Aye.
So that was the easy one.
Well, I was gonna say, anybody opposed?
That's not the one with the ink on it. These are the
Okay.
ones with the ink on it.
All right, so, we're on to public art, procedure recommendations. So,
Which one?
we are on public art. So, Carol, do you want to explain that?
Came under separate government.
Oh,
You can't, yeah, I just dug something up from Zoe shortly.
So public art, art is something that's near and dear to me, and I've been sort of pushing in. I was hoping to put some ARPA money to do it. So we have a private property down at 500 Main Street, was proposing to put a mural on the front of their building. So I was talking to Zoe and just wanted some input so that if in the future we want to do other public art, then we have some guidelines for people coming to propose that. So that we don't have anything offensive, maybe we have a certain size, maybe we have a certain. So I don't know if it would be almost like a design advisory board. That would be almost an art commission that we could form. That if somebody wanted to do a public art, they would first stop with that group. But again, I was talking to Zoe and we thought maybe this is a good time to start thinking bigger. So that, again, this is a private property, the one that is getting proposed. So probably the town doesn't have too much say. But again,
we would, sorry, we're calling it design. We would, 'cause that's what would change if putting a new window or a new drive-through or something.
Well, this is, right,
It's not a village district.
right, this is Turnpike Industrial.
Oh, it's just, okay.
so that's why it kind of we wanted to be brought to the planning and zoning to get your input and see if we want to put something more formal on the books, so future projects, know how to, where the process would be. And Zoe's online, so go ahead, Zoe.
Oh yeah, and I was gonna add, yeah, this case, it's not in the village district, but it is a good time to preemptively think about the way the village district regulations are written is I sent Tony a little screenshot of it of kind of they're a little bit fuzzy. It says they change to the facade, not necessarily considering color, but that also doesn't mean it not necessarily wouldn't consider color. So, and a mural, I don't know. So I do think it's a good thing to have the commission think about if that scenario were to arise, where you have somebody that does want to put up a mural in the village district. And then I did share, so clearly this is a draft. I used to do work for the Hartford Commission on Cultural Affairs. And I shared this. I don't know if this was actually ever finalized and codified. So I just want to emphasize it's just a draft for my own personal computer that was written by a few commission members. And then I had a copy because I was also kind of reviewing and making edits. But if you scroll down, I thought the piece that would at least be relevant to thinking about this is the idea of both public art and art in the public view, which would kind of be closer to similar to what is considered with street facing facades in the village district, a big mural that is on a piece of private property, but in the clear public view, is that something that we, as a town, want to have certain either guidelines or design advisory equivalent in place about, and, Carol, you also mentioned wanting to kind of get grants and take more of a lead as a town on that. And in that case, a separate kind of question would be, does the town want to put more in place to facilitate that? So, policy doesn't necessarily mean just like, you can't do this, you can't do that, but also, how do we facilitate it if that's something that is a desire. So obviously from a zoning standpoint, there's limitations, but I think it's a good, I think everyone on the board would be able to contribute their thoughts on it, given the fact that we do have a mural that will be going up, at least one. So yeah, that's my quick spiel. And I do think at the very least, we should talk about the scenario of, if we have somebody that wants to do a mural in the village district, does that fall within design advisory in the way that the regulations are currently written or not? And then kind of also talk about any broader recommendations or thoughts about either guidelines or facilitation of public art more long-term. So.
Thank you. So,
We're moving this to like just murals, because I mean, I don't want people complaining about my cool little holiday star I got into my garage. It's very public, if anybody's driven down Grady. Although I would like to say some of my neighbors' holiday decorations.
It's gonna be all public art.
So it's
maybe we could have a sculpture garden someday or something, so.
I've seen this in practice up Lake Huron when I was traveling this summer, and they were colorful and full across huge buildings in downtown areas, all the way up the coast to Lake Huron. They were all thematic to Lake Huron, so it wasn't like, ads or billboards. It's worked really well. People
Yeah,
are
to
really
make
super
your
happy.
downtown more vibrant, it really,
Yeah.
the economic development, the economic impact is very positive. They've done all these stories, public art is something that brings people here, look at it, they hang out, maybe they'll spend more money in the town, that kind of thing, so. So any art would be what we're thinking about, but murals. As so.
We have some locally down to our south, right? Not we, but
Oh, yeah, Saybrook
It
has
exists.
some really nice
Yeah.
ones.
New York has bulls.
I'm just thinking what box it would go into. We would define it as any public property. They should not like grants or, right? It's just a matter of a private citizen saying, oh, I'm gonna put a sculpture on.
Well, Again, we thought if somebody sees that one down there and thinks it's very cool, and they have a property here in downtown, the district. So then, how about if now all of a sudden somebody says, oh, I want to do that, and then we really should have some guidelines or kind of be a little proactive here, because.
I just think of the smoke shop doing something. Like, oh my goodness.
You made an inflatable man.
that's art. I mean, it's all in the eye of the beholder.
My wife has someone offer me about that.
You just changed my opinion. I thought I was clear on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on the fence about that because, again, just because you don't like somebody's art doesn't mean it's not art. And I'm stuck with that. So
It's a bit different than the design for the village, which is set of architectural standards that have been deemed, what represents our village and our heritage. And because apart from saying it must stick to a theme.
Why would you say
But even then, why would you get?
That's contradictory to art.
Yeah, exactly.
Art is intended to be provocative. I think our village district standards would provide sufficient oversight in terms of it being contextual. If it refers to the context,
We don't want
there could be
profanity.
comment.
We don't want
So,
profanity that ends up being too scandalous.
well, I
I
want.
think that we should have a regulation on public art. Although I'm not really clear on what standards. to impose, but I think I was actually just shocked that, wait a minute, I thought sign regulations would kind of cover that, but they don't.
You
So
can't regulate content in a sign.
that's
I mean,
true.
unless
Yes,
it's,
or
Right.
color.
you
actually.
can't.
In writing guidelines. Very-
So was
It's
was
not
that
just
planning and zoning or?
Education skills about creating rules for our.
How do you define?
This is a daisy, everybody draw a daisy, there, you did up, no, it's really. It's really bad, I mean, apart from having anything vulgar, same with signs, apart from restricting vulgar language. I would hate to say obscene or whatever, because then we have to judge what's obscene.
It's entirely subjective.
And if you had this, if you had a review board, it would be those people deciding what is.
I mean, there's a lot of Matisse that I love, but I think there's a lot of Matisse that would be questioned, you know, so it's like.
Simple.
Got it.
I mean, a lot of regulations.
So the other part is not.
In New York, do they still have a sign that?
Yeah, it's in the description of the village
Yeah,
district.
smoke? They
course
used
it
to have
is.
a sign.
Oh, the
that
camel
we
sign
had-
on Times
So we
Square.
go down.
Oh, that's long
No,
gone.
that's one gone. But just like, you know, my wife's on
Written
floor, so she
description
does-
and,
they
and
just love the
definitions
floor.
and ranks on this, so we should look
Build
at
this
that.
generational
Yeah, no.
architecture.
Section.
It's absolutely glorious, you
Which,
know?
I don't even remember
It
which
says
part. was it.
proportioning color.
Yeah, appropriate.
Yeah, but
That's a benefit.
she
Texture,
did
scale,
do
mass, proportion, and color.
scenes from New York.
Yeah.
City. I mean, she had a whole section. They're not well known.
Not highlighted for me.
Besides what that is.
So this is the part that we weren't clear on is the, no, this course that's got to do that is, so all new construction shall be designed to complement the character of the existing development on site and within the surrounding area and shall relate to the surrounding area with regard to texture, scale, mass, proportion, and color. So it is kind of saying that if you have something that's bright purple and every building over there is blue or white, it's going to stand out. And so it's not really relative in color. It does that get tricky in the village district?
Yeah, and if you scroll down to the other stuff, the more the village, keep going, the main village district, it talks about, so alterations, facade that is determined, incompatible with its surroundings from a design sense. I just think I don't know if right now the way it's written is a little fuzzy as it would pertain to a scenario in which somebody wants to put a big mural up in the village district. And if you scroll down again.
All the scrolling.
You
Where am I stopping?
have too many regulations.
Yeah, well,
And then here, Tony, I'm gonna look at which part I screenshotted to you.
I was trying to do that, but I don't want to end the meeting again.
No, it's okay. I'm gonna open it. Oh, of course I didn't take a full screenshot, so I don't see the full number. I think it's right above where it says procedure. So if you go down a little bit more.
Really?
Yeah, so yeah, wait. Back up. So
More?
any change to a facade, should any portion of that facade be visible from a public way, this shall not be construed to necessarily include change in facade material or color, but may include any change which affects the character or period of a structure or which is not in harmony with the surroundings. So I could just see a scenario in which, I could choose to interpret this like as a zoning officer, if somebody, let's just scenario time, someone puts up a mural in the village district and then a neighbor calls me and complains about it. And I say, well, it was only a change to color, which is not necessarily considered an alteration. And so I'm not interpreting it as needing any kind of review. And maybe they'll say, but it changes the character of the surroundings or is not in harmony with the surroundings. I think, the commission could just also come to a consensus that right now, for example, and we could just say like, we're going to choose to interpret murals as, not being considered not in harmony with the surroundings for this, pretend scenario. But I just think it's something worth discussing since since we're talking about public art, and the way that the regulations are written, I think could be construed both ways right now. So
So the first problem we have is zoning enforcement does not have the authority to determine whether something has merit aesthetically. It would necessarily have to go to design advisory board by the state statutes. You'd either have to go to a consultant or a board to make the determination as to whether it, you know, is appropriate aesthetically or not. But as soon as we start to regulate art, we put a burden on enforcement that we can't meet. The reality is if a mural, a piece of art is sufficiently offensive that a neighbor or somebody wants to file a complaint, it's going to go to litigation. There's nobody that has the authority to determine whether that art is offensive or not. Anything put up is going to offend somebody just because they don't like a color, they're triggered by something. But I think that, you know, if it is sufficiently offensive, it can be litigated, and the appropriate place for that enforcement is in, you know, is in the courts and not with a regulatory body that doesn't have the expertise by state statute definition to make a ruling on it.
But what is keeping anybody from creating one face of their house?
No,
Well,
this is the village district.
Right, if it's in the village
No,
district,
just in the, oh,
you
okay.
can make the interpretation that if it's a mural on a building, it's part of the architecture.
I didn't realize, okay.
So then it can go to design advisory board, and you can have that conversation. The important thing is having the conversation and trying to get cooperation.
So what other kind of
So,
art do we decide on?
I do have
Is that
a
the
follow-up
right?
question though for that. So procedurally, your recommendation would be, like, let's say somebody in the village district asks me, hey, I want to put up a mural. Is there anything I have to do with the town to do that? I would procedurally send them to the design advisory board.
Correct. Yep, because
Okay.
that's in our procedure right now. And if it's,
What isn't that regulating art?
what's that?
Isn't that regulating art?
Regulating architecture, because a mural on a building is part of the architecture. It's
Just like
part of the
your-
design.
With the art.
So
that's part of the-
I understand, but where I'm going with that is, do you need to extend that outside the village district now? Because you're saying it works well in the village district, does it work well outside of it?
I'd say no.
Then why does it work here? I'm just devil's advocate.
Well, any kind of review board.
Because it's a unique area.
Any kind of review board, you know, if we're gonna have a concert and we chose which musicians were suitable, if we decided who could show up for the muster and not show up for the muster. If all we think that forms of review, just review makes it sound a lot nicer than regulate.
Yeah,
I think we should find out if somebody else has an active art council and see what they've done. And look, I would call my sister who's on an art council in her Lake Huron town, and they do mostly music, but they also have murals, and I want to ask her what their process was. Okay, and if it's worth repeating, I'll bring it back.
I think Cromwell has one too.
And we could also hit up Brett Thompson because he ran a big art place too at one point, so.
He's coming in tomorrow. I have a meeting with him, 500 Main Street, and I asked Brett to come and sit in.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it. If this means more art in town, that's pretty exciting.
I was gonna say, I like the fact that the whole 500 Main Street is just turning into something all on its own.
Yeah.
To share with the board, I was out last weekend and overheard people referencing that as our little music district. They've gone to some jazz music after being at the tavern across the road.
Yeah.
A place I wasn't even aware was there, really. But they're like, yeah, that's the new district. And I'm like, all right, well, it's organically working well. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna do some more digging on see if there's an art council and what that looks like.
Thanks for talking.
All right, on to old business. Ordinance recommendations, town exemption from zoning regulations, which we talked about already. Again, we have Halloran and Sage looking at that. Everybody's favorite, the blight. Which was red lines, I think. Of course, I don't have that copy. No, I don't want to take yours. Okay.
You doing white first?
I made
What you got?
copies because I had some suggestions.
Oh,
that
I printed these out.
I did track changes on them because I had so many things I wanted to go over. I didn't want to confuse.
So
everybody.
many. So many.
Well, that was, you know, it's not on the 45. The staple's not on the 45, but my boss would have a heart attack.
The copier did,
I know.
not me.
Yeah, where do we start? I have lots of big copies.
So, right, you read Linda, I'll let you take the lead.
Well, if you want to just go over my stuff first, yeah.
Okay.
Starts on. what page is it?
We're on 2-2.
5,
Okay.
page.
Oh, you look back, I got caught up in the definition.
Well, I didn't.
I think it took me a half hour to get past the definition.
It's funny.
Maybe if we cut out some of the stuff that I had here, the definitions would automatically go.
Please share.
So 2-2. Definition of standards. You see under 2C. That's where it starts. Exterior walls which contain holes, breaks, loose or rotting materials, and I scratched out everything after that. Properly surface coated to prevent deterioration. We had discussed previously that we wanted to deal with things that were already deteriorating, open holes, open roofs, you know, things that were falling apart. This is talking about, now we're gonna try and prevent that. So we're already getting into who's gonna determine that this is properly surfaced and will even deteriorate. So I think if we stop it at rotting materials there. Next page. F, cross that out because it was already stated under 2-2B.
You can cross out G.
I was thinking G myself because I have a rip in my screen.
Have the screen door, please. Everybody who has a child under the age of 6 has scratch screen.
Or animals.
Right.
You know,
First
I
cut.
could have crossed out everything, but.
Yes, I was
Sorry,
there.
but,
This is,
you know,
I'm going through ridiculous, ridiculous.
And I would agree with
But
that.
before, I want to ask for definitions. Where does, as residents, where does Bushy Hill or any kind of camp rental that's a short-term rental? I'm not talking about the kids that come, I'm talking when they rent to families, you know, for family reunions or graduation parties, and they stay in, you know.
You're on a whole different regulation. Let's get through this one first.
Oh, right.
Still on like,
Well, the reason why, no, the reason why I had that, I pushed the notes out. The reason why is the stuff for blight. If you, so we row over there, our crew teams.
Yeah.
And we actually have cleaned up a lot of this stuff, but they have watercraft all over. It's not necessarily used. They have, I mean, at what point? I think this whole section should be tossed. I mean, it's arbitrary.
I tried to cut it down to what we had talked to
Well, here,
before, you know,
fences are
German.
broken. Does that mean stone fences or wooden fences? Because I can just pick on anybody in my neighbor. Say, yeah, you don't have the right number of stones. It's not level at this point. It's, you know, you got a few stones that have fallen over towards the street or a few that have fallen inside.
I agree with you. We were struggling with this one last time.
Should it be wooden?
Let's know that name.
Well, let's back up, because we're getting way down the track here. So are we getting rid of screens?
I would get rid of screens too, yeah.
I'd get rid of 2,
Which one's 2?
the whole section.
Section
Any
2.
condition which
Yes.
poses a serious threat to the health, safety, and welfare of town citizens.
Yeah.
Because safety could cover, you know, a building that's attracting illicit activity. Any of those things can be interpreted. As soon as you begin to itemize them, it says, I'm okay
I
with
agree.
that.
I agree. I like that
I
idea.
think you can put it in there, if it walks like a duck,
Yeah.
it's a duck.
Yeah.
And I think we'd be all set.
You think that'll fly?
Ducks.
Some of these, I get their intent. I get the intent, but they don't say what they mean. They mean what they say, but they don't say what they mean, like overgrown grass. Well, since they cut back the trees,
Yeah.
you know, I've maintained a part of the strip in front of my home, because then there's
Oh,
trees.
no, I
in my
cut
house.
overgrown grass. in the building.
Yeah,
No, no,
yeah.
no, no, the
But it's like,
sidewalk.
but not everybody does. I'm expecting
Meadow.
everybody out there on the side of the
We have a meadow.
I'm with Alan. Take out the whole section. And just say, is there a health issue, a safety issue, or welfare?
Right, and
Again.
safety is what we had spoken about before, where buildings are not secure. That's all. Make sure there's no
Yeah.
big open doors.
Right.
Secure the openings.
If building's unsecured, you say that's a safety issue, and you can have somebody check it out.
Right.
And then they can say,
Health takes
This is
care
why
of
you
garbage,
need to.
rats, standing water, for mosquitoes.
Yep. Public hearing.
Oh. You can. Guys, always learn and add something later.
All that redlining.
So,
Yeah.
Hey,
so that's
I
kind
took a
of.
lot of it out.
Necessary.
Not the whole section, though.
Well, what they close with standing water is health.
But a lot of that was, like you said, a lot of that was health. So, I mean, we're on to 3. This is all about notice, which is probably right in line with Connecticut general statutes.
Right.
Which is why the attorney's gonna look at it.
Yeah. And that's
Tony,
where
do
I
you want to
stopped.
share the screen or
Yeah, I didn't
at least close out this part?
Oh, sorry, Zoe, you don't have a copy.
Hold on.
Oh, I mean, I have it open like on
No,
my
you're right.
computer, but so that anyone else that's on, because I was looking on my own too and
So,
realized
so do
that.
we need all these definitions that were, because if we said 3 is the water, if we go back to my section, the kind of stuff, the definitions, there's a few here that are just way too ambiguous of how they're worded. It's like junk, any parts of a motor vehicle. I mean, you can take away my tire swing. Because technically, according to this, I don't know how to when they are. That was a gift from my neighbor, because he had too much stuff in his yard.
We've been meaning to talk to you about.
Well, actually, Daniel, I do think you,
Quite a segue.
Hold on, guys, hold on a second. Sorry, Zoe, what was that?
no, I said, I do think Daniel raises a good point of like, you know, what is junk if it's being utilized, you know, is it like a tire swing? You know, if somebody could say, well, there's an old tire in their yard versus, but there are situations where it kind of falls into this area of it's not pretty, but it is being utilized by this person. Luckily not in this town, but in another town, there's somebody that has 2 toilets in their front yard with plants growing out of them. So
Happens in Essex too, so.
Yeah.
It's thematic, it's contextual.
You're right, the most of the definitions can probably go.
Yeah.
Took out section.
Well, yeah, because we have a definition for motorhome, but then I don't even think I was listed in section 2. I don't know if we listed it.
Right, I haven't put it home. Mind doing it.
I mean, we know what smells bad. We know when we say motor, we know what we don't want. But at the same time, if somebody is a proper owner and parks it properly and winterizes it, it's still there for more than 60 days. If it's there from December through February.
All right, well, let's quickly look. I mean, we only have Article 2 to go through really, because
Which definitions do we need?
yeah, let's go through the definitions, because this has to go to the selectmen, it's got to go to the attorney, so let's.
Well, I agree the days are calendar days. We can keep that.
Well, let's go back to abandoned, because that's the first one.
Oh, no.
Where are we? Just.
I haven't been-
I've been going back and forth. trying to
Article
figure out.
2-1, right at the definitions. We'll start with abandoned.
Oh, yeah, it's this one. All my stuff.
Well, typically you have definitions if the word is within your regular
Right, we just
regulation.
took out-
And if you just pick them out,
Oh,
Just
then
take
you
out-
don't need the definition.
So we
Yeah,
need,
that's awesome.
we need property maintenance officer citation hearing officer.
Yeah, who's actually gonna administer?
So we need to keep those.
Yeah. Everything above that should go, I think, abandoned accessory.
Lighting premise, we don't need that. Accessory structure, we don't need that.
Community
Yeah.
standard, I think, has to go.
Just goes
Yeah,
through.
that's
it.
what
Won't happen, we don't have any reasonable numbers.
But, Jesus. Well, yeah, I thought that was a heading of community standards, a separate thing. Okay.
So, okay, are we giving up abandoned? Yes, just, okay, yes. Accessory structure, yes,
Yeah.
giving that, okay.
Because it's no longer in the regulation to define.
No, actually it is. Accessory apartment isn't in the regulations, but I,
No, but what we took out, we took it out all.
We took out section.
We're taking section. Thank you, Tim. We took out section 2 too, so that means we can get rid of a lot of these.
okay.
Again, I think we keep days, because that's mentioned in section 3. But the group debris, so
Maybe we-
that's the difference between junk, right? Because junk is like saying, like, well, no, I have a use for it, it's my tire swing, where debris is saying it's incapable of immediately performing the function of the design including the fault, no, because my tire's not doing what it's designed.
But we're not. We took out all of section 2 though,
Yeah.
so we don't have
So we take
one
out,
of the conditions as being debris anymore. We just have it as
so we remove.
serious threat to health, safety and welfare.
Doesn't matter what it is.
I think all this stuff just comes out.
And if nothing else, we just add to that one sentence that we kept stating that what that means, health, safety, and the welfare is secure the buildings and health department issues.
I got it. And then we had art. They go and they decide if it's art or it's blank.
So if we go back,
Or is it blank?
if we go back to the part that we were gonna keep where there was a citation hearing officer. I mean, honestly, we could take out all the definitions and just define a citation hearing officer as in the general statutes.
Thank you.
And we don't even need the definitions.
I agree.
Yeah.
Take out property maintenance officer.
I was gonna say, take out all of the definitions, period, and just refer to the citation officer as defined and connected to the general statute,
Okay.
So we move, right?
Yes.
right? Because then you don't have to go through the dealing with this, you've defined it this way, but it's not the other way, who interprets what.
Yeah, to revisit what we were trying to avoid is we don't want to create a burden on
Right.
residents that are well intended, but maybe incapable of, putting the new siding on their house this year and then start, taxing them on fines, then it becomes 3 times expensive, right?
Yeah.
Well, you can't have definitions that say a community standard is a judgment by a reasonable member of the community.
Yeah.
You can't do
I think
that.
that's how our town was founded.
Well, Alan said there's nobody reasonable here anyway, so.
Yeah, we already took that out. I think.
Probably unreasonable to say that.
It's on record.
And as far as all the procedure of the legal stuff, that should be looked at by a lawyer.
Yeah, that's the one that's gonna go to the town attorney.
I didn't touch that.
The one thing that we might do is reference DMV standards for vehicles
I really don't.
and say that because DMV has the authority to act on vehicle issues. If we reference that, we may have we might by reference in the state statute say we defer to their definitions and regulations for motorized vehicles, in which case.
I kind of like that, because there is a violation form you can use too through the DMV. But maybe that's not a bad idea to reference the DMV standards, the Connecticut Public Health Code.
Yeah.
And.
So by reference, the standard exists. And even if they're not enforcing it, we
Right.
can cite them saying that you're at variance with these DMV regulations.
Okay, I like that.
Is there a regulation concerning, the motorhome fall under DMV?
Mhm.
How about watercraft?
That's also DMV's gonna be registered.
They have to be.
Yeah, but it's not, because I'm part of Blight. I'm screaming at my boys because they leave all their boards out on the beach, right? Because I live on the lake and all that.
I'm not going
I'm
after
trying to
it.
tell them, well, it could be if it was, in the middle of town, all stuff all over your front yard.
No, because DMV has specific definition of what they call a abandoned or a junkyard.
Hmm.
Junkyard has its own definition and has 2 or more abandoned vehicles that aren't.
Yeah, okay, I know about that one, right?
And then you've got the illegal repairers and all that. Other than that, your boys are safe, their boards are,
Yeah.
everything's good.
I wouldn't mind-
DMV
I
doesn't
wouldn't mind
care about
Zoe coming over, putting a little scary. on it.
All right, let me ask a sanity question or just check this. So the house on Bridge Street that we had all the problems with all those cars and stuff. Any condition which may pose a serious threat to health, safety or welfare, would that cover?
Well, that was definitely an health department issue because they had like batteries and
Oh, great.
tanks.
So-
and-
so-
The whole gamut,
So
yeah.
we'd be able to use this and go after that.
it. Yes,
And that's why I said you should
And we-
definitely public health code, the fire safety standards and the
So we would say from a health standpoint, that it was,
septic's failing, it's fire hazard because you can't enter the building. There's
chemicals
unregistered,
leaking. into
right,
the-
there's unregistered repair going on there because they are advertising the repair shop.
okay, all right. I just want to make sure that would cover.
So
Yes.
how about another, I I don't remember the address, but we had a couple of properties that were complaints about permanent flea markets in their yard, or estate sales or whatever. And that's definitely a blight issue, but where would that fall in with this?
That's not
Or would we
right.
use and we enforce it?
That's not even,
That's right. That's
Well, I
what
think
I
that's it.
Well, I mean, but how did, 'cause I know Zoe had to go and talk to some people and ask them to stop.
Well, it's not health, it's not safety.
How did she use to enforce it?
I think
You talking about people having tag sales.
I think we scared her away.
yeah, but they're,
Permanent.
Permanent tax sales,
Yeah.
yes, yes, and people are bringing stuff to them, so they basically operate on a licensed thrift store in the front yard, which I personally don't care about, but some of our neighbors do, and there were complaints, and one of our neighbors was shut down on Route 80 by the cemetery.
Well, I can, there's probably issues you can apply of traffic. Maybe.
Yeah, she's off there now. She did some, she told them something, so.
I don't, well, I think you're getting, tell people they can't have a tag sale in front of their house.
Well,
no,
it
it's
was
not just one. It was continual.
it was continued, it wasn't over a weekend.
Jump cutter along.
Running a business in a residential zone, I guess.
Saturday.
But that's one of, the blight complaints we get, that's one of the big ones.
Yeah, but that's gone.
That's not good. That's,
Well, that's the people complaining, would say.
But we could make a reg for that,
We lost Zoe.
Well, then do we need to though?
not with blight.
I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just listening.
Oh, that's weird. It didn't, you disappeared
You
on the thing.
disappeared on the screen.
Yeah, we have a question for you.
See that?
Yeah, what's
Okay.
with the? There we go.
She's back.
So we're trying to figure out the ongoing tag sale. How did that end without a blight ordinance? Didn't you have to go up there for that, or was that John?
That might have been John.
Well, it might have been John, that might be just from Zoe was transitioning in.
Okay.
Because
So do we-
I've had some complaints about, junk, etc., but I haven't had any complaints in the last year and however odd months it's been specific to an ongoing tag sale. So I'd have to ask John what he did.
Okay.
I would assume it has to do with running a business.
I agree.
Yeah.
Your junk is my treasure, so it's one of those interpretation things. It's got to be the function, use, the pattern of the traffic. Yeah.
Okay.
I was gonna ask though, what if, somebody has, I don't know what the term is, collected or stored, a lot of tree trunks and stuff. I mean, they're chopped up, but there's so much, it can't really be construed as fire. Right, just tree
It's a
trunks.
tough one too. I have a whole tree that's down on part of my property that can't be removed. It just can't be removed. I mean, unless I bring in a crane.
Do they ever put it up for firewood? No. It's been there for, I mean, it's half a yard. Really?
So is it just wood, or is it wood chips or full length logs?
I want to say mostly full length logs. Some of them are longer than others.
Where is it?
My favorite property on, Prospect Hill.
I go by those logs all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Yeah. Although there's another property on Prospect.
I mean, would that fall under logging? Don't we have that in the regulations as something that needs to permitting?
I think you're right. So we can check
I've
that.
never seen anybody deliver them. They just seem to have
They disappear.
appeared. And
I think when I cleared a lot to build and then they kind of abandoned the hills.
no, this is next to the one,
Okay.
but it's a different property, yes.
Clinton is my favorite town. So Clinton had a case where they were just dumping wood chips on a property, and come to find out that is considered municipal solid waste. And so there are regulations against that. So I will look into it and see if trees fall under that same.
Yeah, that would be state.
But what if you use wood chips to make like a path or?
No, this was.
You don't understand.
Yards and triaxles full and.
I do understand. That's how much I've hauled it to make the paths in my woods.
The wetlands?
No, not wetlands. I'm not a wetland. I'm not a wetland.
Okay.
I am next to a water course and I had Randy come and I got little, I still kept up all the little tags and everything, which are free. So.
To answer the question on the tag sale continually running, I think in our regulations, it lists what zone allow businesses, retail businesses. And if it's not listed, it's not. So for instance, R8, it doesn't list retail businesses. So that would be a retail business.
Okay.
I think that's how.
That's probably how we did it.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I just kept I had to take down a lot of trees that were gonna fall across Route 80, because it one did, and then some of them they can't get up because there's the hill next to, right? And I told them I'd pay them to get it up, but they said no, and so I have that, so I chipped up what I could, and that's why I have all the chips, I made use of them.
Okay, Tanner doesn't care.
No, I'm,
No,
it's
I'm
really
kidding.
not a
I'm kidding, I'm
wetland, it's
kidding.
not a wetland, but I'm thinking like in that scenario, like,
But I think,
give a fallen tree is a blight.
well, it's anything. It's how it's presented, right? I mean, you can neatly have stuff in your yard versus throwing it askewed everywhere. So I think that's gonna be the interpretation of the enforcement officer. Right.
Again, I think it's just to be combined with the art council, and you can go, and it's art, or it's blight.
All right, well, we still got one more to go, so let's keep going.
It's a sculpture.
It is. What's that?
We're all set with this then?
I was gonna ask, is everybody else all right with what we've done? And I will get it to you one more time with the DMV standard, public health, and fire standards.
And everything?
Yeah, we kept our.
Take it out.
Yeah.
Article 3.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Okay.
Building code violations and everything like that.
That was in the article, part of 3.
Well, that's not, I mean, that's,
I mean, if they're referencing crab and, health.
right, but those are, I mean, health is ongoing, fire is ongoing, the building code is,
Building code is enforceable anyway.
what's that?
The building code would be enforceable by the.
Right, but I'm thinking a violation of that happens while you're building something, not after the fact. I think that's why that's separate. Does
No,
that make sense?
the building official can make the building secure.
Yeah.
You have to ply,
He
put
doesn't
plywood
think
over
it's-
that open door. You can't leave it
It's not
He can do
safe
that.
to have it,
Yeah.
or that, yeah, but he can secure the building.
Okay, so we'll do building, DMV, public health and fire standards, just so it's in here and they can reference it if they have to write a violation. Okay.
Well, you know, we can save a lot of people a lot of trouble if we just substitute the building official or us and all the people we're talking about. Just give somebody the power to say, no, you can't.
Do we have a whole war about not having a king?
We did.
I think I'm all right with that. All right, let's go on to short-term rentals if we're good with the
Yeah.
property maintenance / light.
Hey, Tony, can I ask one question? Back up just a second.
Of course.
For the actability of this areas, are we thinking of doing it throughout all of Deep River?
I mean, at the moment, sounds like it. It's still good, so it's still gonna have to go to a town vote and pass all that muster too.
Yeah, but everything we were just talking about, if you take like the property, for instance, down at the four-way stop by Winthrop or John Winthrop,
Yes.
they got the house, they got the tarps out front that they had a tag sale and never got cleaned up. There's an old barn falling down in the field. What does that consider as far as?
That building, it looks like it's condemned, with broken windows and it's open, I know exactly what he's talking about.
I do too. Well,
So it would fall under this. It would be building, secure the
Health.
building.
Yeah,
If the barn is falling down,
That's
then
a safety
can
issue.
that go to
You know what's a perfect,
unsafe structure, but nobody lives in it, so I don't know.
I think all of you have been here long enough to just down the street from that, in between there and Deep River Farms was the red barn that was surrounded by caution tape for a long time. So is that secure? Does that, I'm not a building official.
Obviously not.
But that was allowed. Is that,
That's gone now, right?
it's gone now, yeah. But that was dilapidated. It was falling over and they,
Agriculture.
That barn I'm
Yeah.
talking about is not far from that same condition.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
I look at it, if the building looks like it's gonna collapse and may collapse and
Mhm.
somebody walks in there and they get hurt, it's a safety issue. So
which
we
is why
should
it's
be
gonna
able
be
to-
secure.
Yeah. And that's, if we ever get our sidewalks run down to that corner and over to the park, children will be going by there.
True.
The children.
But then falling back on that, I have no idea the situation of the owners of that property.
Yep.
So
If you want to
moving forward,
enforce it,
if you look back
go
at
through
this
this.
part, it says through human resources to reach out to them too. I think that's in a major part that we have to look at as well.
I agree. I think that if there's a condition that's noticed that is obviously a public safety issue. And there's an intervention, either requiring them to remedy the situation or the town comes in with the appropriate resources to assist making it safe. You could sort of,
That's item 3C is the warning letter, right? That's the discretion, the warning letter.
But what he's saying is, we go back to the lady who's got the 3-foot high grass, who is, you know, in a wheelchair, she can't get out there and mow it. The town comes out and mows it and then leans her house.
We
I mean, this,
don't want to do grass.
I know, but it's that, I'm using that as an example. So these people who own this house may not live there anymore. They may live in Florida and are incapable of doing anything with that property. Do we find them? Do we lien that property and take it over?
No, we had this discussion before. There's degrees of working with a resident, right? Like,
And that
there
property.
might be that we financially.
It maintains right where it is.
All right, it might be just we give them more time, or like to see a plan.
I think it comes down to.
And on the other hand, back to your art situation, is some people consider that barn falling down as art.
Yes.
I do like
Yeah,
a big bar.
It's,
I do too. So,
it's context.
Yep.
I mean, I think it does come down to if there is a safety issue. And there seems to be a need to intervene. You write the letter, you identify the risk. Then you can determine if the owner is capable of taking care of it, or if it's, and if they're capable of taking care of a health or safety issue and don't, it comes out of negligence. And then you have recourse to, you know, lien the property or collect for it. If they're not capable of taking care of it, then the town incurs that burden. And whether it's referred to social services or find a means to rectify that for the public good, using town crew or whatever, you take care of the issue. But
So do we need to add to what you just said, we need to add to 3(1)(b), which has inspections. Would we say inspection and determination before warning letter? The determination process. With all the words you said.
so
But like-
the building official has the ability to enter a property if there's a safety issue.
Alright.
So that's the ability for, you know.
Right, but I said
inspect.
between the warning letter and I guess after the inspection then, or part of the inspection will be a determination. It's like, oh, this person's in a wheelchair, so they want to fix this.
but it's in the warning letter. So the last, number 4 is at the discretion of the property maintenance officer, the contact information of the town human services department for the purpose of encouraging social work assistance for those in need. Right, and then,
So do we need to add this anything to that? So that's for those in need.
No, and this property maintenance officer, that or citation officer that takes care of this should always be working with human services, social services, should always be working with the building official, the fire marshal. That should always be a collaboration, always. And social services should be a part of that. Our building official always works with social services when he finds hoarding situations.
Well, hoarding is what I
They-
think of,
You
yeah.
know, all those situations, our building official always works with our social services coordinator.
Okay.
So that should always be a collaboration between departments.
So that suffices then, what Alan was saying, C4.
Yeah, I can't see that whoever is enforcing this would not be discussing this with the first selectman. The board of selectmen,
That's
would be, you know what I mean?
We haven't made that, right.
Right, you know what I mean? This is a small town hall.
Yeah.
Mhm.
all right, and then I mean, if we find that this, I hope that if you find this isn't working the way you want it to work, it does get corrected. That's the nice thing about ordinance. You can always change it again.
Stan, did that, you brought up the point, does the section 4, does that? Do we need to add anything to that, or does that suffice for it?
Section 3.
Or, I'm sorry, section 3.
3C4.
Or it's just the effective date. So
No, I think it suffices. That's the point I wanted to make, is that path needs to be followed by whoever's appointed to this position. I mean, everything has got to go through the correct format right off the bat.
Yeah, so that's necessary part of the determination. All right.
Yeah.
Again, we're not writing this ordinance, we're advising on it, right?
Yep.
Which means some of the stuff still needs to get fleshed out by, you know.
You can start
town.
simple and you can always add.
Well, I'm a big fan of protocol, so that's, if it's in, it's part of the set protocol.
All right. If that's all right with you guys, like I said, we'll revisit that one more time. We still have short-term rental.
Hey, Tony, can I stick my head in here for a second?
Actually, you can't, it's not a public hearing. This will come to a public hearing though, Fred. I'll let you in on that time. I apologize. It's
Okay.
just protocol.
Well, no, it's just the thing about appointing this first selectman to inspect. You know, I think you should look into what, how the legalities of somebody entering someone's property and inspecting or re-inspecting, you know, what the requirements are for that.
Okay, will do.
Somebody could be targeted by a selectman for political reasons.
Well, I know, I'm giving you time that I shouldn't, but there's a hearing officer that does all this. It's not the selectman. So there's a separate entity completely. But again, we'll have a public hearing about this, Fred.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Actually, we won't, but somebody will.
Well, yeah, true. All right, so, Town of Deep River short-term rental ordinance. We stole Essex and chopped it down quite a bit. And it was basically, we just really, our recommendation was we really wanted to just say, if you have an Airbnb, you should register it and you have to pay the fee and have the health department look at it.
But we did change this a little bit from the last time it was circulated.
Well, I was thinking we should cut some more of it down because,
Yes.
again, we just want to go register with the town, pay your fee and have it health inspected by health.
Right, and that's all it should say pretty much. So my first question was, and I brought it up earlier, when we were talking about the blight, is so for permissible short-term rental, it says any living space within a residential building, but that would count as Bushy Hill. Now, I know we're talking about residential means house, but that is not what it says.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Just, again, why do we have the definitions?
Yeah.
It covers, they have to be registered.
So yes, that means Bushy Hill have to come and enter, all right, okay. So that's, I just want to know if that includes Bushy Hill. As they become short-term rental, because we're not just talking about the kids, they family, but they could all go there and have a planning and zoning weekend or something. They'd be happy to put stuff.
What were you gonna say, Lisa? Sorry.
Register, pay the fee, health inspection and building official inspection for carbon monoxide and
Fire.
Fire.
Yep.
Yeah, smoke detectors.
So, we want registration and we want fire.
Yeah, either BO or fire marshal, because sometimes BO can handle the fire marshal stuff, so whoever has to do that, but carbon monoxide and smoke detector.
I have a question.
Mhm.
21H.
Yep.
Owner's agent. Why do we have living no more than 10 miles from the property? It just seems,
Again, that's why I said, let's take the definitions right out.
Good, or you take deficit, thank you.
Yeah, because we ran into that the last time.
Yeah, there were a lot of problems.
And then, so we go to eligibility. I mean,
So, yeah, we're gonna issues here. So if we're including Bushy Hill, they have residential halls that don't have kitchens or, well, I'm sure they have shared bath. I just drop my kids off there, go back and forth, but, I think the bathroom bills are separate, so I guess that's a shared access. But it's not on the premises. But same thing with the cooking isn't on the premises either. And then going forward onto the next page, 2 people per bedroom. Well, I guess, if you have 3 kids, you can't put them in a king size bed.
But again,
My
this
God,
goes
that's
back-
crazy.
but again, this goes back to health. So let's just look at this as take the eligibility out because who are you gonna say who can do what? And just keep it at permitting.
Thank you.
No one shall offer or rent or operate a permissible short-term rental in the town of Deep River without a valid short-term rental license approval by the authorized enforcement official issued in accordance with this ordinance. And then so we just, failure to secure a license shall be in violation of the ordinance and subject to the fines enforcement as defined. So we'll let them come up with the fine and number. Just take B, D, E. Right out. Right, and then general standards, maximum occupancy is defined by the health code, so we can't deal with that either.
Can we just say in reference to that health code?
That's what I'm thinking, so.
Because I mean, the way it is, and that bothers me. I find, it's just not all bedrooms are the same, because again, Bushy Hill, if we're counting them, they have rooms with 2 bunk beds in the same room.
Right, but again, that goes back to the health code. Can your septic
So do
handle
we
it?
enforce that, or do, I mean, I didn't want to.
Right, the connected, or so it's correct. The health district.
So you're taking out all the detail and just
Right.
saying.
Does the state-
These people do their jobs.
Yeah, yeah,
does
okay,
the state have summer camp regulations?
Yeah.
yeah, but this.
And the health code.
It's a summer camp, because they also, you gotta take the kids out of it, the thing is, they also rent units there to adults in the same way that the houses on the lake rent, and the same as other short-term rentals. So if we allowed to do that without approving every year, yeah, that's favorite here. Yeah.
All right, so we're down to maximum occupancy, conduct, all that stuff, because again, that's a police issue. We're gonna have,
Yeah, no sleeping outdoors. I wasn't sure about that. And then and with section B, there's actually an error, because when it goes to number 5, that somebody forgot to hit enter to make it another thing. Owners may not sue food or meals or whatever. So we can take all conduct out.
we're gonna take,
Okay, good.
because I mean,
Lying to fix.
right, application process, an administrative short-term rental license application issued by the land use department must be completed. All information entered must be true. Following contact information, authorization. Floor plan I can see because the fire department was probably gonna want that.
No, that should be turned in. The floor plan.
That's what I said.
Yeah, that's.
I said that, I'm saying the stuff that should
No,
stay.
I'm glad, because
Application fee, that should stay, my thought. You could yell at me if you think of what we're stepping here.
I didn't have anything there.
Application review,
Why we ask for copies of sale tax receipts from the previous rental period?
all right.
I'm sorry, 6-1.
You haven't gotten there yet.
Sorry.
The authorization or enforcement of their local law.
A bunch of overachievers homework.
Shall approve it and then license application, according with this ordinance. So I'm just gonna stop. So the last, we're on 3, no, we're on,
No, we're going too far. You're just doing the
yep,
6.
hold on, 5E. The staples in on 5FB. So I just was gonna take up the last part of the sentence. So basically it says, the authorized enforcement official or his or her designee shall approve or deny any license application for permissible short-term rental in the town of Deep River, and it's in accordance with this ordinance. And then just take out the rest of it because we've changed so much of this.
Mhm.
Now we're on to 6. Right. All short. Expiration. All short-term rentals are valid for 2 years from the date issued unless otherwise suspended or revoked pursuant to this ordinance. All seems okay. Renewal process. 3 months before the expiration. Copies of sales tax. Yeah, I don't, I wonder if they meant that you paid your town taxes. I wonder if that's what they mean.
Personal property. tax.
Yeah,
Well, no, if it's a.
Well, sales tax is sales
Says
tax.
sale-
I know it says that, but that makes more sense if
Well,
it's
as
your
a
town
rent, as a
taxes.
rental, I'm not up. on it.
Because the taxable rate on a rental property, on a short-term rental property is based on income stream and the property value.
Okay.
So you'd have to submit what your rental rates are in order to
Ah,
qualify what the tax rates are.
oh, see that?
Thank you, Alex.
Correct.
Okay. Right, so that's why that's in there.
So your property tax would go up based on. Fact that you run a business.
Right, if you're generating income, so it's functioning differently than a residence. And if you're gonna do that, you pay your fair share, that's all.
Going to hotels. There we.
Yes. Regulated by appropriate authorities, so you're up to standard, and if you generate income, you pay tax like anybody else.
Well, that's one of my favorite things in here, the authorized enforcement official. That's just a great badge, so.
Right. I mean, everything else looks okay.
And if you say, I was getting anxiety on general standards again. I mean, that's, yeah. I can't go back. Thank you. It's great.
Yeah, it's still gotta go back to, again, this has gotta go to the attorney and all that stuff too, so.
Tony, it's-
Essex put in that radius because Norm was telling me they really were trying to discourage absent landlords.
Well, you know, they can keep
Because
theirs
they
really
don't want
simple.
people
Don't
coming in
murder
and buying
people.
the properties and, you know, they didn't live around here.
Just put that in there. Don't murder.
Well, most of our rentals here, the people who own the rentals here don't live here anyway. I mean, you know, Deep River has quite a few rental house places and the people don't live in Deep River at all.
Yeah, and the reason why it was, like, no offense, I know that there are some rentals over in Winthrop that when the Wesleyan graduation season comes, families, you know, this is very close, it's affordable. And, you know, then they have a little graduation party or whatever, but you know, once you start umbrella everything, you know, no events, no fun. It's like a TV commercial for that. Yeah.
Zoe did say we don't have complaints and issues at this point. So again, if we start simple.
Right.
We have it
We can always
works.
back up.
Yeah,
We can go down
We don't want
and
to-
address issues as they come up.
This
We
is a
don't
big
want-
step, just getting to know which ones are in town.
Right.
Right?
I think it's good that we register, I mean, for everybody's safety, for sure.
Tony, as chairman, you got the discretion to recognize people off the commission to speak. We do. We have somebody here who has operated a Airbnb. I don't know if you want to speak, but if you have.
We can update an Airbnb.
Better, right.
I know.
That's two separate. Yeah. But so, again, you would have
We were inspected,
input on,
we were inspected twice by the health department, twice by the fire marshal.
Yep.
Requirements.
We had to maintain food safety license, not that their Airbnb is preparing food for someone, so that's not. Well, we paid water temperature, so, you know, we had to maintain fire exits, safety.
and that's all regulated by agencies outside of the township.
Right.
That's
That
right.
everybody would be
That we
subject.
had to pay as well.
What happens with the biggest problem nationally is that Airbnb's owners might have 15 of them in different parts of the country, and they're not paying business tax on it.
Right.
So that, you know, we got tax on the same beds, the same desks, the same
Right.
chairs every single year
Be your
to the
personal
town.
property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First project.
Yeah.
So a lot of these places are sliding under the radar. So it's
Sure.
low hanging fruit for towns not to be collecting this from.
Right.
Because if they don't want to comply to that, then don't run a business.
Which would be why they would have to report what they were making in order to determine what that rate.
How many people,
Understood. Thank
how
you.
many people can
Yes.
be in a room? Per square foot, so all that determined, because a lot of times the Airbnbs, it hasn't happened here yet. But you know, you'll end up with 100 people,
Like Chester.
No, we don't want that for sure.
and at least, you know, ongoing.
You made a good point out of state owners. I mean, we took out the 10-mile zone, but
Well, I think what happens is it becomes, that has become a huge problem even within cities, that we've lost housing. For
Yep.
people working in the area, small young families, because, you know, that just comes off the market. Now with this affordable housing, now we're looking to compensate. It doesn't sound like much, but you go nationally, how many Airbnbs there are across the country.
That's
across the
regular,
world.
this whole business model.
All of that property is taken right out from,
Yeah.
you know, we lived on an island, they did it down there. They had to start shipping in laborers from different islands because all of that housing where the laborers lived in.
Yep.
So those are some of the
Experience that firsthand.
Thank you, guys.
thank you so much. Let me ask you again, do we want the owner's agent to be at least in Connecticut?
For right now, maybe we just start with this and see if we end
Yeah,
up.
I
with
think we
issues.
work to that, and see how many people are applying for permits, because right now the permits are gonna be renewable, you have to come back and reapply. So,
Okay.
you know, if we give somebody a permit, they show up and it's like, oh yeah, we're buying these 4 houses and we're corporate out of Denver or whatever. Right now, we kind of would probably have to give it to them, that we know like, oh, we're not renewing that.
Well, no, it's at the discretion. If you read through, there's a discretion. The discretion is whether or not this, you can do an
Oh,
Airbnb.
so we can review it now.
Yeah.
We
Well,
restrict
it's not
that.
us. We're not the enforcement.
Well, I mean, town, as a town, the greater us,
Mhm.
the Deep River and Brienne.
So
So they could deny it just from a discretionary standpoint.
that's how I read that.
So relative to our own zoning regulations, is this defined as hospitality or is this defined as a residence? Because that would determine our regulations where.
Well,
So that's something we're gonna have to wrestle with.
But there was a note in the ground that we struck it, you have to live it, but there was definitions of what makes it the residence, you have to live there 183 days a year.
Exactly. It's how long you can have people on your property. So that determines whether or not it's hospitality or you're renting.
Can I just say one more thing? Yeah. There's someone who works in a town hall, an adjoining property to them. There's someone who lives not in Connecticut. They don't live in the house. It's an Airbnb totally.
Mhm.
Is it a business or is it a residence? Because you know for sure that the person who owns that is taking full write-off on everything that's going on in that house. So that's determination that planning and zoning is gonna, is it a business or is it a residence? It's a long-term rental, the definition of long-term rental to compare it to short-term rental. That's a fine line that you have to determine.
It's good. I mean, again, there's already these loopholes, there's already issues with that inherently anyway. That if you take the ADUs into consideration, you let somebody buy it because they say they live in the house, right? And you check it, it's valid, they live in the main house, they're renting out the little house. And 3 years from now, they're renting both out. I mean, so you're always gonna have people play both sides of this.
Yeah, by the way, I don't know if we want to stop that. If somebody decides, because they made something off the ADU and they're able to do something else, and now we've added an additional housing. It'd be on a per case basis.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you're always gonna have outliers, so.
But it goes to that short-term rental, because you can rent a house long-term if it's a primary residence and it can be an accessory unit to that.
Yeah.
So again, I don't think that's split hairs. We just need to be able to, if we identify and allow this use, our regulations also have to identify where it can be, and that's by definition. But I think it's clear that if it's a revenue stream, it's a business, and so it would be a hospitality use, and
I don't know that zoning wants to get involved with Airbnb business. I think if we start with this and see if we even have an issue.
Let's see what we have in town.
Start with this
Yeah.
before because why does zoning want to get involved with Airbnb business?
This is the way to do a study that we get paid for.
That's a
Right.
little. That would be a lot to put on our
I agree.
zoning official, and then when you're talking. Going out and enforcing when people are renting, they're renting at night and on weekends. Then what? So,
Well, that's why there's a separate enforcement officer in this.
yeah,
Right. What you're saying from the zoning standpoint.
Authorized.
Enforcement, right. Oh, all right. Okay, so if you guys are good with that, I'll clean this up some and get this back in front of us too.
A curiosity question.
Yeah.
Once it's in our regulations, how do we get that word out to all of, we don't know what's out there. Is there 2? Is there 100? Right, so.
These are ordinances. Think about
There's a lot.
it. I think we have to statute.
You can go on the, you can go on,
Airbnb site.
yes,
Exactly.
VRBO and Airbnb website, you could just type in Deep River.
I know.
And they all.
We're actually now just doing it by word of mouth because the fees were up so high, whatever it is.
VRBO.
And then they had enough return customers.
Yeah.
I know, because that's where I used to stay, and then I just started giving cash direct, because they're like, please don't go through this.
No, what I'm saying, we'll be expecting them to start putting in applications when this goes live, right?
Right.
Yeah, otherwise they get caught, they get fined.
But you're gonna have to have a public announcement of some kind that says, hey, we have this in place now, you better come in and register.
But for the ordinances, the selectmen deem, okay, we're gonna do this ordinance, is that a vote that you have at your meeting, or do these have to?
Town vote.
Go to town vote, so that's a public.
The board of selectmen will vote to move it to a town meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, town meeting, that, or in the town vote.
And then all the residents get to weigh in.
All right, so that's the public notification. Now, if it is somebody that lives in another city or town and they got a rental here, and they don't know, I think even if we put it in the local Middletown paper, we're not gonna reach these people in Denver.
Yeah.
I have a feeling it's Florida more than Denver. Question though, now that I was just thinking about that, so we also didn't think about this. There's gonna have to be a buffer when this goes live to when you can register, right? So if this becomes law today, now everybody's not registered.
Yeah, but that's for them. You said that's not us. That's for them.
I know, I'm just putting it out there, so, right, you're gonna need a buffer period where
Yeah,
everybody
we
can
know
come
that.
in and register.
Right.
You know, like the dump stickers, I got a great one still, thankfully they're open Saturday.
You know, we'll be a flip of a switch for sure.
Again, we're kind of advisory on this,
Yeah.
make some comments based on observation, but town legal counsel and reputation, but.
If you wanna catch the absentee bear and bear owners, you slip a thing in the tax bill, everybody gets that.
True.
That's really.
I think you might be able to, you'll do much better.
Okay. All right, if you guys are good with that, we're on to other things. CEO. I think she left us again. Nope.
Good night, everyone.
I'm here. Just
All right, so anything from you?
A good question. Nothing. No, nothing new from a zoning enforcement standpoint. There's been some ongoing stuff that is ongoing. But yeah, my other attention has been to trying to get some things kickstarted for the downtown master plan. So I just will be sending out contracts, signed contracts back to SLR and CT Main Street Center. And then some POCD stuff that we can wait until we get to the POCD. So yeah, besides that, just some ongoing things, some questions of, you know, whether or not certain complaints are a zoning matter versus wetlands versus other issues. So we've had two different kind of drainage related issues that have come up that aren't zoning, but you know, we've been involved in the conversations. So but yeah, so but nothing new to report.
One is on the, yeah, we're gonna execute the contracts, but what's the process to get them, the work initiated? Because I think we can probably get both Main Streets and SLR mobilized.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's a good question. I'd actually like to set up a meeting, or I mean, we could also talk about it right now, of just, I don't know if we want to keep it the same kind of subcommittee that was reviewing it, the proposals prior to the contracts, or if some folks that weren't in those meetings want to join moving forward. But I'd like to meet with the PZC to kind of determine the approach we want to take, and if we want to, because right now we have SLR and CT Main Street Center, and then Tyke is managing those remaining kind of project points that weren't covered by the two other proposals. So what I would like to do is look at what, you know, which deliverables are under which contract and which things can or should run simultaneously versus which things make sense to stagger. So yeah, I would like to meet and develop a timeline and then set up kickoff calls with both SLR and with CT Main Street and commission members / subcommittee members if you guys want to keep it a little bit smaller, of a downtown master plan kind of committee. So I could send out an email to try to find a date that works for folks, or we could talk about it right now. It's whatever you guys want to do. But thank you for asking. That is a good point. That's kind of what I was envisioning as next steps. So I'd like to meet and talk about what our vision is for implementation of the different, or timing for getting information back for the different deliverables before we meet with both SLR and CT Main Street Center. But I do want to reach out to them to set up those meetings as well.
On the working committee, I think we should, solicit interest from, the planning commission. And it may just be the people that have participated to date. I think we need to have somebody from EDC
Mm-hmm.
hearing group, and I think we need somebody from, the town on the steering group, because they would also be a resource for records and information. So, and again, they don't have to be a participant that comes to all the meetings, but identify a resource in a town for our consultants to access town records and information. That'd be my recommendation. And if we can try to push for a kickoff meeting in February and maybe find Ace in consult with the consultants, find out what the most viable working plan is, because we don't want to stretch this thing out too much. We want to get them mobilized and get the data acquisition done.
Yeah.
And they can work independently on that and then present to us, and we can periodically talk about the next steps. But would you foresee, and I don't know if they gave a schedule in their, I don't recall if everybody gave a schedule, but we be nice to look at, completion of this work in a few months, so that it coincides with POCD completion.
Yes. I'll have to look at SLR's contract again. I don't remember if they included a timeline. CT Main Street Center did. They kind of did it like week 1, week 2, week 3. So I believe it was 6 weeks. So a fairly, fast turnaround for that one. So they'll be easy to set up a launch meeting with and decide on the start date and a time that we would expect deliverables, and maybe a check-in point or two, if it makes sense for the flow of the work. And I'll have to review the SLR contract to see if they also had timed out week by week or not. But we can do a similar thing with SLR.
So if you could take responsibility, just do an overlay of those tasks and their schedules, and then maybe that's the first thing we end up reviewing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you have Stacy's email, but I actually asked her about this already, and she was on board. And I'll see if anybody else from EDC wants to join in, just to have a second EDC person.
Great. Perfect. Yeah, because I mean, I definitely agree EDC should be involved, especially because they have also already done some work and downtown Main Street assessment with the Connecticut Main Street Center. So we should, keep that continued into this next phase of planning for the downtown. So we don't want to have those be siloed or lost along the way. So
The only other issue that I had was in our materials, it was included, and there was a application for home use, which was a administrative action to approve. Is what was in the folder the actual application?
Where
It was in the folder materials for this particular meeting. It was an application for home use
at Spruce Lake?
at Spruce Ledge Retail.
oh,
I actually got some insight from her, so she's gonna come to next month's meeting. I told her that Zoe would reach out to her, so she ended up calling my cell phone and wanted direction, so I said, please reach out to Zoe, set up a meeting with her, she'll tell you all the stuff that you need to get together with. Tell us everything you want, and we'll see where you need fit in, what you can and can't do.
So are we revisiting the retail use that's been permitted, or are we addressing
We already gave
different
up.
use?
so
Well, that's my comment, is that
Yeah, I don't think.
if we give them a permit on that application was insufficient for action. So
But that's on us.
it is, but I just want to say, for the record, that's
Right. So that's why they're coming back in. So she's way past what she can do under this. And that's why she's coming back in.
That actually does raise a good broader thing about the way that the home occupation regs are currently written. Just because everything is administrative, but the description for home occupation has a lot of things that are about what the commission could require, except that no home occupations go to the commission procedurally. So it's a little bit of a disconnect there. So that's kind of a bigger question of revisiting those regulations and amending them so that they make a little bit more sense procedurally, and either getting rid of the language about the commission or having there be kind of a stopgap of like this, you know, certain things are easy administratively, but certain things, if they hit, if, you know, there is a point where it would have to go to the commission, or something, just because right now the way the zoning, the use tables lay out the procedure versus what is in the description of home occupations don't match up.
Yeah, you and I talked about that, so I actually think at some point we're gonna need a regulations meeting, because it sounds like the short-term rental's gotta be in there, it looks like this needs a fix. There was a couple other things that you and I have bounced back and forth, I have to look for, but so we may need a regs meeting, so.
Yeah, so I also talked, because we were just gonna come up with the last meeting,
Yeah.
there's my neighbor across the street.
Yep.
So I'm able to see what they're doing. And when I was talking to Zoe, it's like, we have no, we gave him the permit. We have a process that she just stated that it's administrative. So there's nothing in there that says that we are able to review this. I think that we need to kind of get our ducks in order
Yeah.
before we waste her time. Like, we're gonna have her come in and then then we're gonna think about whether or not we're gonna allow you. I'm not sure.
But-
We still don't have anything.
Well, no, that's not true. So some of what she's, I mean, and again, shouldn't be talking about her application. There are things that she's doing that don't fall under that. That's the issue. So she's got a permit for one thing and has done 13 other things. So that's the reason for coming back to us. And I think that's, but again, let's,
I was under the impression of the reason the neighbor complained, at which point it would be a traffic issues, because that's what that neighbor complained about.
so the traffic issue, again, I don't want to go off a tangent. That's gotta go to DOT. That's not our issue.
Yeah,
It's
that's why
state highways. But if she's got a home occupation, if you read the home occupation definition is to be inside that building and that's it. That's our regulation. So again, do we go back? Is it something we want to allow outside of the building now? Then we need a reg change.
I think
So-
also the easiest reg change is the ag activities,
Yes.
and the acreage required for that, and then have her, as well as there's at least one other person who is below that 5 acre
Yes.
mark that would qualify for those ag
Activities.
activities, that if they can come in for special permits, then it all is much easier than this kind of
Right.
these weird things that some things fall under the right to farm, some things can fall under things like a home occupation, but then there's this in between that is a challenge right now.
Thank you for articulating that, Zoe, but that was my point. I'm not saying that she shouldn't come in, but I'm kind of thinking that we need to get some of this hashed out.
Right, but
Because of the, I mean, it's a tree farm,
that's
it's
permit,
a horse ranch.
right?
There used to be a bigger property, but then they split it and parceled it, which causes, that.
Right, but that permit doesn't validate any of that. What I'm saying is the regulation specifically says that anything you sell has to be kept inside. The tree farm isn't inside. So we haven't, you're right, we have an issue, and so did, and inherently so does she.
Joe Majeski's.
He's over the 5 acres.
He's a.
Yeah, they parceled it down, and that's it, but then they were able to maintain their tree. I mean, they're on the state registry as a tree farm.
Yeah.
Right, it is.
So that's what kind of.
But so the problem is, so it's one thing to like say the trees. So it's one thing to grow trees, bring them out, sell them. But once you're doing that on the property, that then still falls under the zoning regulations that can be regulated as ag activities.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets into that area of it
Then she has the store.
yeah, and so those
Yeah.
things should be properly regulated, and right now don't fall under what's allowed under the activities because of the acreage thing, and are bigger than a home occupation, but obviously also makes sense for what the use of the farm is. So I think it's I do think we need to revisit the regulations.
It's, and again, shouldn't be this far into it, but it's a farm, right? I mean, if Joe Majeski's
It
a
was a
tree farm,
farm. It was a farm and it's,
but she didn't own it when it was.
but it's
when it
set as a, I mean, they have their names on the Spruce Ledge Farm, tapestry. I looked it up one time. It's my neighbor, but. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, maybe they would have lost, I mean, I don't even know if the state knows that the acreage went down, or if there's an acreage requirement, or if it is, when we revisit, if it is actually a state deemed.
So Chuck Bialessi owned the entire property.
She did,
Split off the property and sold it to them. So they've always owned 4 acres.
which is why I didn't buy the price, because I would have bought the whole darn thing.
That house, you're
No,
braver man than I.
I wanted to put a cider right there, I would just make this town a whole.
I'm gonna go back in. We're not talking about somebody who's not on the agenda. Let's move on to BOCD.
So he sent out the chapter on municipal facilities and services, and I think she would like us to look it over. So,
Yeah, send me feedback as soon as you can. I'm gonna be sending out things in these sections, and once everything is complete, I'm gonna have it broken out into a handy dandy folder so that we can click through and review section by section. And then I'll just because I think it's easier than sharing out the whole doc and then doing scrolling. You can just look at the one section. I'm waiting on feedback from Sarah and Tanner for a final kind of or semi-final draft for the natural resources and conservation section, and then that'll go back out to you guys. And I'm just gonna keep chipping away and sending out so that we can get this to the finish line. And just, yeah, please send me any and all thoughts, comments, edits. Just because it's January. If we want to have this adopted in June and we want to be able to give the public time to kind of digest the whole document, I'm working on it, moving it along on my end. But when I share it out, please review it, so that you can give me feedback now instead of in June or in whatever the month before June is. I don't know time right now, May.
So quickly too, we still have another Harbor District discussion right? I mean, we had some input from those guys. We're still waiting on the lace factory people. They're gonna come back into the next meeting now, apparently. So we still have to iron that whole area out.
And
But-
actually, because I was sick and missed that discussion.
Mhm.
But I'm assuming that, and so correct me if I'm wrong with this, how much of the Harbor District discussion are we incorporating into the actual plan versus are we having a discussion about if, the plan, like what the plan has already laid out as it relates to being applied to the Harbor District? Does that question make sense? Like, should I be taking note of anything like or is there specific language that has arisen that we should make sure gets added into this POCD draft that maybe wasn't?
Two of Alan's comments were the expansion of the Harbor District and making it more aligned with, what did you call it? I can't even remember now. You referred to it.
No,
It's gone.
mini Mystic Village type thing, is it something that is, the heritage, the historic context? Not necessarily in terms of use, but it's kind of like an overlay, much like we have the village districts that,
Right.
We wanted to protect the intent of the Harbor District overlay that was
Historical
Correct.
district.
Right,
in place.
right.
Right, and then and how does that look with, if you, even if you took out certain sections of it and said, you know what, it's meant for this, the stuff that's there now is grandfathered in, so, so people keep living in the house they live in if we made it an industrial district. I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
the POC, we're looking at so we can supply guidance, but also find funding. So we just
Yes.
need to say like, we're looking for money in this direction. I
Yeah.
think that maybe we put a little placeholder on until we hear from what they want to do with the lace factory.
Yeah, I think what came out of that is that that was village, that originally there were other uses there. There was a market there. There was some.
I heard that for residents
Some
down there,
industrial.
Mystic Village thing, and then when I heard you say it on the meeting, because that's the day that's. Remember to move kids around, I thought it's like right in sync, I think. There's that middle ground for some residents down.
Right, right. And it's not necessarily expanding use, whatever. It's just at this point recognizing that there was an intent behind the Harper district.
That's right.
And we work towards that. I tend to think that that was the POC discussion of the Harper district. And if there's continued discussion of specifically the lace factory, that is a planning and zoning discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, because that is a specific property that's looking for potential regulation changes or variance or whatever. So I would treat it as such.
Okay, I'm just trying to remember what because we did talk about rediscussing the Harbor District, but maybe not as a public. That way we could brainstorm it on our own. Is that what we're talking? I can't. There's a lot of conversations.
Workshop. We
A
should do
workshop, yes.
workshop together so that we
Yeah.
could work together, but not have the public involved. They can, obviously they can come to a meeting, but not to give opinion. It would be a workshop for us to put our thoughts together.
And then have the public.
And you had queried
Yeah.
as whether or not the property is for sale. I saw that go out because we were all copied in. Did he respond to you?
He did, it's, so it's not listed for sale, is what is the answer I got.
Yeah, that's property rights right there. It can be for sale, it cannot be for sale.
Yeah.
Well, very good.
Right.
It's
I
not-
didn't know if you got the private response because I didn't see it.
I think the public discussion is, big intent and the public interest. So.
So. No, I tend to agree with you. So I think we'll just move on from that and continue our POCD stuff. And if they want to discuss the lace factory in general, they can come in and do that.
And then I think that'd be the appropriate way to handle it. And it's,
Okay. Sounds good to me. Anything else, POCD?
No.
Okay. On to attorney, nothing?
No, I emailed Ken Slater with the planning
Yeah.
ordinance red line, and I think I CC'd you on it, Tony, but
Yeah.
we haven't heard back yet. So that's the only
Okay.
thing.
can we revert back to CEO report? I have one more question. I'm just curious how Bobby Hamlet's variance request went.
We have to reschedule. We could not get a quorum, so we had to postpone the meeting.
Okay, attorney, we're done.
We are looking for people for the CBA. We had somebody resign, so if anybody has anybody in mind, please let me know. Talk to them or her and kind of get them convinced.
Actually,
Voted on in the town meeting, actually.
I just have a question, going back to Bridge Street. How is that going? I mean, the last we heard was that either the person was in jail or they were selling it or something.
It's for sale. There's,
That's what I'm here for. I'm next door on West Bridge Street. And I was waiting to hear about the blight ordinance before I spoke in.
you, yeah, please go ahead. It's,
Actually, Westbrook. I've been dealing with this issue for 20 years. So my question was originally, before I get into that, it is not for sale. It was listed, but it is not for sale. So, there's tremendous history there. So my question on this, even before I get to that, is what in the blight ordinance would supersede that what we already have on the books? What would be different if we pass that blight ordinance, which hasn't been enacted for over 20 years? Running a business, boarding house, 25 vehicles in there, junkyard, 2 statutes, you reference a motor vehicle, with their registry mode, with the Department of Motor Vehicles, they have a special unit. So I'm just curious as to what the blight ordinance would handle that we don't have on the books that isn't enforced already.
Ability to find, that's one of the big ones.
So
If the person isn't engaged.
the house is not for sale.
So I was gonna say, because a realtor just mentioned that to me the other day that it was for sale, so I'm getting mixed.
It was for sale for like 30 seconds on the websites, like it was posted. But I talked to the town attorney today in the Supreme Court, that remediation or whatever they offered him.
It's been terminated.
It's been terminated, so now it's gonna go into foreclosure.
No, well, that's the part that was delisted, because.
Yeah.
They can't sell it themselves, the banks can sell. it.
Yeah.
That's not why, but it's a separate, that's not why.
That's down.
So you actually went to the DMV and used the fact that they're running a business out there and that no results?
Carol did. And
I-
they told her they had,
On the property, you have to be able to see it. Right? He would park something in front. Just every department.
And you know, you go to the crowd, because it is a health issue, I mean, it's a health.
Yeah, and the
Poison in the
neighbors,
ground.
the neighbors have tried for years. It was like every person you talked to had a different reason, different credit. They can't go on the property. They drove by, they didn't see or smell anything that looked like the failed septic.
Yeah,
So,
once.
I mean, it was just, it's very frustrating.
So as I told him, we have the neighbor on the other side who's, 95 years old and is looking down on this property. So, I discussed with them quite a bit. So I guess my question goes back to the blight. Let's say the blight ordinance doesn't pass. Are we still saying nothing can be done there?
Well, what the blight does, it says call, basically it has no key, what it's saying is that we only have a set program for what has already been done in action towards this, it's just we're documenting, we say, report for blight, we're gonna get the authorized officials, this healthy part.
We've already done it. I
But
mean,
we can't make them. we can't-
Kathy Jefferson took it to court, that cited him and had him in court in 2009. So you have upwards of 25 vehicles on there. You're allowed one unregistered vehicle, I believe, right? Or something like that.
So it's the state, it's not enforced.
Huh?
It's the state, I'm sorry, it's the
That's
state.
an that's regulation.
That's what I'm so saying.
So,
But the blight ordinance, if there's an ability to find them. Again, we have to determine that they're not indigent.
But we also don't have a fine
It's
schedule.
Section 3 that we didn't discuss.
Daniel, hold on a second. Hold on a second. You just cut me off for the third time. Excuse me. So we don't have a fine schedule to find them. That's the only teeth planning zoning ever have. The blight ordinance isn't ours. It's a town ordinance, so there'd be a specific enforcement officer for that. I know, I realize this isn't something that, it's not getting you where you need to be, but really the health department and the fire department are the ones that should be dealing with this specifically. And we can't make them do that. So that, again, the fire, my biggest issue there would be the fire, because there's no access to the house if there is a fire. But that's, we're gonna get off on a tangent here that we can't really.
so I guess the answer is that there's the fine.
Yes.
Well, there's other remediation, that, thank you, I apologize, I'm getting my hearing fixed next month.
No worries.
You're gonna do a whole nose job. Crazy. So, in section G, which is the remediation, by having this will allow us to, for a violation, which the violation has been issued, where the violation remains pursuant to a bunch of numbers and letters. The town hall shall have the right to enter upon the civic property during reasonable hours, and then basically, then we could take action. But this is the part that we said we need to send to council to see if that's something we could actually.
Hold on, let's back up. It's not us taking action either. It's a specific enforcement officer. Right.
Well, no, but this does say town.
Right, but planning.
So the building official, if it's a health issue, it'd be the fire marshal, if it's a fire, so, but there's the ability then to take action. Has it been further discourse with the owner or occupant about,
No. I don't
cooperative
think so.
cleanup of the property?
No, Zoe had sent a few letters, and then the owner is in jail, and I
Yeah.
don't think, no one's gone on the property.
So it is going up for sale. Do you know, it's go through the courts, it's done?
As of yesterday, they terminated remediation. So now the next step, again, I'm not a real estate attorney, the next step is it goes into foreclosure. Because, if the homeowner is not participating in the remediation, the bank's gonna say, we're done. It's probably the last thing the bank wants, but now, that logical step is, that it probably a wait time, correct, and then it goes into into an auction. Not to say, and again, my concern is, so let's say miraculously come up with some money now, and this blight ordinance doesn't pass. We in this, we've been fighting this battle for 15 years.
Question.
Yeah.
A question, and it's not from planning and zoning standpoint, but do you have a well or you're on public water?
Okay, we're on public water. I have a well, not for drinking, but we're on septic.
Yep.
West Bridge Street is on septic and has city water.
You should have your well tested
I could do that. I could do that.
and send it to the state. Don't send it to Brad, send it up to Matt Pollock at the state.
Agreed. And there's probably a lot of things, but when you kind of look at it as it's R30, it's a multifamily house. Zone 4, it's a boarding house.
Yeah.
Okay, 15, 20 people living in there. Business being run out of there, flatbeds for years, dropping vehicles off, cars sitting out there. You can walk right by there now. There's 6 unregistered vehicles. Cars, boats, backyards worse. So yeah, could I get the water tested? Yeah. But that, that's kind of what we look to you. Look at down.
Carol, I remember when we had our discussion, there was issue that we get this passed in time. In the case that there were foreclosures, the bank would be probably to, it'd be like a lien. They would have to, we could have to clean up, they'd have to clean it up.
I had somebody contact me today that wants to buy it. So I think the town owns it. So, and then she reached out to the town attorney, got told the same thing, like the town does not have ownership of it. So if we can get it into foreclosure, I mean, that might be, she seems pretty persistent, Miss Gal. So that would be great if she could
Well,
kind
it
of
could be beautiful. It's probably-
convince the bank that we pay our money right off.
But now, but the issue is the bank's not going to deal with anybody until it's, in foreclosure.
Right, and the foreclosure process can go on for years.
Well, I think the step in the pre-foreclosure is the remediation, where the bank sits down to say, okay, let's work, let's refinance, let's, do this, do that. But, and there was an agreement, the owner was in jail, subsequent to that, after getting out, the remediation, he didn't show up, it's basically a failure to appear, failure to appear on Monday. And so, you can go on the website and it shows that it's now going, it could be before the judge, and the judge will say, okay, we cancel it. But the concern, and I'm not just speaking, I'm talking about the whole day, but 15 people around who are concerned about it. So the issue is saying, what's the blight ordinance going to do that? They're in violation of operating a business. They're boarding house. Rules, illegal junkyard. So some of the people are just asking me, what's the purpose of the blight ordinance? So I said, well, we're gonna have to see what they have to say.
So just real quick, could you state your name because the recording did catch it?
Peter Corcoran.
Okay, because Nancy's got to write the minutes and make sure you're in there. Okay, I mean, I think you got some very valid points, and I think the fees or the fine schedules. I mean, it is what it is. If it passes.
Yeah, right. That's and so just to get the better understanding, that's what we're trying to figure out what the blight ordinance would do that the other zoning regulations.
The town will not be.
Yeah.
Very close.
Right, and then, if that doesn't pass, maybe the planning and zoning commission gets a fine schedule. That is another option. So, I mean, we haven't discussed that but that is available through the general statute. So.
Maybe like doing both at the same time.
Sure. I mean, we haven't discussed that, but maybe we bring that up at next month's meeting.
You got a badge, right?
No. All right, on to chairman. So two quick things. So I stepped down from the regional planning committee as their regular member, just not enough time to do things. But Daniel, being the part-time member, decided he'd step up and take that on full-time. So thank you very much for doing that.
Sure.
However, that leaves a opening for an alternate. So anybody is interested, please reach out to Carol because that is done through them. Any questions? If not, budget. Not in that time frame yet, so I got nothing. Daniel, your backup, River Cog Housing Committee.
Well, I would like Zoe to change it to River planning and housing, so I could do one report together, since I was wanting to hold over going forward, and there was no planning meeting last night, so that's the only news. No response. So for housing, though, there was a meeting, and when I last spoke, my last report is I mentioned that I was concerned about the numbers weren't adding up, that they're, you know, the numbers they originally worked with us on, that we have the POCD says we're shrinking, and they don't know, but you're gonna grow away. And so I made a lot of noise like I do, probably, you know, people, I apologize. But what I got out of it was, they did do a presentation. Carol, were you there for the presentation in December meeting? They presented Deep River as the case of, they brought it down to 51 houses over 10 years, I believe. That's what I was trying to look up earlier, but I thought it was on my phone. It's not. So I will send that slideshow to this group. You can look at the slides. It leans heavily on duplexes, is how they're saying we're going to increase our units, and we don't allow duplexes necessarily, right?
Well.
Yeah, I know, that's, I was kind of like, I didn't bring it up at the meeting, the housing meeting, but like, I'm not sure if we do or not.
So there's a problem with that.
Uh,
So I was reading through the regulations looking for something about the Harbor District and happened to notice that the revision made for duplexes doesn't jive with the actual regulation, the way it's written. So in the back end of the zoning regulations, it states that there was a discussion about duplexes and changing the wording and everything. And so I don't have a solid answer on that yet, but what I want to do is go dig up the minutes from that era and we'll revisit that, because it doesn't. One of the two is wrong. So either what's written in the back end of the book is wrong, or the one that the actual definition is wrong. So there's a problem there. So we're just gonna ignore that for right now and continue the way we've been doing things, and then we'll.
That was what we used to call it family.
Yes.
But right now, we're understanding that we do not allow that, but in our current regulation. All right, so in summary, from Squeaky Wheel, they made us the example in the report, which is some great information. It's all hypothetical, how we would apply that. I will share that with the board. And then the weakness in there is duplexes, and that's not the first time I've heard it from housing. They sing a lot of duplex songs. As we saw earlier today's presentation about the TOC, they like duplexes before law. So that maybe something we wish to revisit.
I mean, we do kind of have duplexes in the fact that, I mean, you can have an ADU. It's two family.
Except that I can't sign a CO for a two family. I have to make it say ADU, and right now the ADU regs have that language about 1,000 square feet or 30%, which gets kind of.
Understood.
Didn't we allow duplexes in the commercial district?
Yeah. But there's an error with the wording, so we'll have to revisit that.
So it says go for two family duplex, right?
Yeah. It's just, there's something screwy with the wording when, I think it was 07 when they changed it. So I'll dig that up and,
Big language shit.
yeah. Anyhow,
That was it. Thank you. That was my report.
well,
Any questions?
so I was gonna say, I think what we'll do is we'll have two on there. So we'll have regional planning committee and the River Cog Housing Committee. Because they're two separate meetings.
You're
So,
the chairman.
I mean, you gotta get the reports, so,
No, it doesn't matter to me. You're the chairman.
okay.
So you want, I just want to make sure the planning's on there, so.
Okay.
You know.
You're gonna bring up all the bills too, because don't forget they send that out. The bill, they're,
Yeah, well, we didn't do it last week. It was Christmas.
Yeah.
Remember Christmas?
Right.
2 years ago?
a long time ago. All right, payment of bills. None, which I like. Fantastic. And adjournment? Motion to adjourn, anyone?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Guys, thank you. And everybody have a good night.
Hey, good night. Have a good night.
Hi.
Hi, Stanley.
Good night. Good night.
I thought you were on that.